Heroes are those people who have managed to transcend the capabilities of traditional humans. A boy in black clothing calmly approaches a massive mountain of muscles, and judging by his extremely questionable taste in clothing, is certainly a villain. This is part of the hero's routine, fighting against this kind of people. Before being struck by this individual, the hero reacted with his fiery fist, quickly achieving victory and being cheered by the onlookers present. Through his helmet, they almost managed to see the face hidden inside. Another boy watched all of this through the screen of his cell phone. He and his friend were impressed by the feats of that hero, defeating his enemy with a single punch. However, there was something there that left him intrigued, so he began to look even closer. Soon after inspecting the image, he looked at his friend who was slumped over the table, clearly intoxicated. There was a certain similarity between the faces of the two, the heroes and Sion's. But as soon as he heard this, Sion said it made no sense at all. At that very moment, he was struggling against nausea. He couldn't possibly be a hero, and his friends began to find it amusing. Then that same boy received a notification on his cell phone. Getting up from the table, he announced that the effects of dehydration caused by alcohol were working very well, and he needed to relieve the excess water in his bladder. As he walked toward the bathroom, he continued to observe the screen of his cell phone. On the news, they were saying that the mysterious hero had disappeared after saving several citizens. Finally, the boy managed to enter the bathroom. He immediately locked the door, and with the cell phone in hand, he announced that he was there. Surprisingly, that same hero who had saved the people also appeared in the bathroom. Sion asked the hero why he had lifted his visor like that. They could be in trouble if people discovered his identity. The hero began to remove his helmet, saying that the boy worried too much, complaining that things get very hot inside that helmet. Wearing clothes similar to the other boys, he said that it was a great way to get free publicity. Now that he had put on his clothes, the hero asked if Ju-won could return to his original form, because seeing him with that appearance made him quite uncomfortable. After apologizing, the boy said he would comply. He first needed to take a deep breath. Gradually, an energy began to envelop his body. That hero observed the scene with some curiosity, revealing that he actually found it quite unpleasant, since that boy could perfectly copy someone else's appearance. The hero also had one last message to give, and he held the boy's face firmly, wanting to make sure that he really hadn't frightened the girls at the table, as some of them were indeed very well regarded. Ju-won said he hadn't done anything inappropriate, as this wasn't the first time he had done this kind of service for the hero, who was relieved to hear that. Placing his uniform on the bathroom floor, he also asked for it to be cleaned, finally saying goodbye to our protagonist. Ju-won found that man's behavior so strange that he couldn't tell if he was a hero or just a gangster. After putting away that uniform, the boy put a cap over his face, finally leaving the bathroom. Like the hero, he also has powers, but just because he has them doesn't mean he will become a hero one day, or that he will live like a hero, like that red-haired boy. In fact, Ju-won has a completely normal life. Everything happened 20 years ago. People around the world began to awaken powers, and it didn't take long for chaos to ensue everywhere. Very powerful individuals were destroying things for no reason, and the conventional power of public security forces was unable to stop those people. One of these new criminals had lifted a car with his hand, and even when shot at by the police, those bullets did nothing to him. Realizing what was happening, the police began to get scared. Until that man jumped toward them, the force of his leap was so great that it destroyed the ground. And he was bringing that car with him, which in his hands seemed as light as a pillow. That poor police officer met a tragic end. To prevent society from falling apart, new laws were implemented by the government, and those who were endowed with superpowers that do not obey the law are labeled as villains, while those who cooperate with public order are the heroes. Even so, the villains have so much influence that they have a headquarters. Nemesis is sitting on the sofa next to a girl, mocking the new law that has been created. He is the leader of the Villains Association. He mocks the police, saying they wouldn't be able to stop him. They are all fools. He believes there wouldn't be anyone foolish enough to play hero after becoming an adult. As soon as he finished his speech, the windows on that floor were shattered, and a masked man in a cape entered the place. They all started laughing at the costume and asked if he was really wearing something like that. It was then that the hero referred directly to Nemesis, and according to the first law of heroes and villains, he would be punished. Even after receiving that threat, Nemesis continues to smile in the company of his accomplices. Transforming his body and increasing his power, he said he didn't know where that citizen came from, but he definitely wouldn't allow him to leave that building without suffering some kind of dire consequence. Charging furiously at the hero, he said it was time to learn where he belongs. What the villain didn't expect was that this hero also possessed great power. Striking his stomach violently, he hurled Nemesis' body with such force that several walls were destroyed. That entire floor was devastated, and the fight between them had only just begun. The imprint of the hero's fist was etched on the chest of that villain who, now much more frightened, is wondering who that man is. The hero approached him and said his name is Justice, and he came there to enforce the law. From that day forward, Justice became the most popular hero on Earth, ushering in the new era of heroes. On the other hand, the only thing our protagonist can do is copy the appearance of others. He can't fight against superpowered beings using that ability, and it seems he has finally arrived home. He immediately began to lament, saying that heroes have a very good life while he is stuck in that standard of living. Shortly after his brief outburst, he picked up his phone. There is still some kind of functionality for his ability. The problem is that it is completely illegal. At least he can make a little money. Heroes can play at this as much as they want. At the end of the day, they all want to make money, just like our protagonist. And after lying down on his bed, he started to self-motivate, saying he would work hard enough to retire by 50. His rest was immediately interrupted as someone was knocking on his door constantly, making the young man wonder who it could be. After getting up, he announced that he would answer the door. As soon as he opened it, he was immediately surprised, as the one on the other side was Justice himself. The first thing he did was ask if that was Ju-won Lee, but our protagonist was left speechless. Entering the boy's apartment, Justice said he heard that he has been doing illegal work, acting as the water of superheroes. Ju-won thought Justice had come there to arrest him, realizing that trying to escape would be pointless. But to his surprise, Justice was there to hire the boy's services. Not believing in this possibility, our protagonist asked what the purpose of this was. Justice said he heard that he usually doesn't ask questions, and our boy had to agree with that as he is very intimidating. Opening a briefcase, the hero said he had brought everything he would need for that task. After examining some documents, Ju-won said there was no photo of the hero's face there. It was then that Justice removed his mask. Revealing to him what his true face looks like, he asked if that was enough information. Our protagonist said yes, and asking when the work would begin, the hero said they would do everything tomorrow. Handing him a black card, he told the boy to meet him at that address. Ju-won had a few more questions to ask, but Justice jumped out the window, disappearing shortly after. All that was left in the boy's hands was that card with the address written on it. The next day, he headed to the marked location, finding a large building. Looking at the vastness of that structure, our boy realized it was indeed intimidating. He even decided to confirm the address on the card once more. Once inside the elevator of that building, he was thinking about meeting the hero. Justice's reputation is that he does everything possible to protect the innocent, the complete opposite of someone like our boy. Ju-won doesn't know why he was hired, but he recognizes that he can't miss an opportunity like that. Because he can make a lot of money, he had finally arrived. There was a man sitting in an armchair. He presumed he might be a hero. Ju-won asked if they could talk about business, needing to discuss the confidentiality of that agreement first. But there was something very strange going on there. As soon as he saw the hero's body up close, he realized that there was no longer any life in it. Ju-won went into shock immediately. He couldn't believe that the hero had passed away. Justice is the #1 hero. It's impossible that someone could have done that to him. Telling himself to calm down, Ju-won began to think that he might still be alive. So when he went to touch the hero's body, he felt something passing through the tips of his fingers. It was like an electric current, spreading rapidly. Not knowing what it could be, the boy panicked once again, until that mysterious energy caused a repulsion between both bodies. Ju-won was thrown to one side, while Justice's body was sent to the other. The boy tried to get up, and looking at his own hand, he began to wonder what that light was. That's when he realized that something strange was happening with his fingers. They became deformed and started to pulse. Ju-won was now truly desperate, as he didn't know what was happening to his hand. While observing the deceased body, he began to think that the light was part of his ability. Not knowing what could have happened in that apartment, he decided he needed to get out of there quickly, as he was in a crime scene. Going down the stairs, he thought he couldn't get involved in that situation. Fleeing the building, he realized he should report it to the Hero Association as soon as possible. In the middle of his escape, he bumped into a man carrying a cup of coffee, and it seemed that this person recognized him. Ju-won was now apologizing for what had happened. It was at that moment that he made eye contact with the man. This is the hero of the fiery fists scene, who is asking what our protagonist is doing in that place. Ju-won immediately thought he was saved, as that hero in front of him could help him. He never thought in his life he would be so happy to see that jerk's face. Sien asked why our protagonist was holding his own hand that way. Ju-won didn't even need to explain anything to him. As soon as he saw his hand, it had already returned to normal. Changing the subject, Sien asked if he had any idea how expensive that suit was, belittling our protagonist, saying that if he worked his whole life, he wouldn't be able to buy one. But his conversation was soon interrupted by a strange sound. Our protagonist thought someone had discovered the crime scene. Sien said that our boy owed him a dry cleaning. Without them noticing, projectiles were flying through the air. One of them hit the hero's abdomen, tearing away a large portion of his flesh. The injury is certainly severe, but he remains standing, trying to understand what happened. A villain is entering through the window, saying that from the news he thought that hero was much stronger. But after what he saw there, he is sure that he must be weaker than he imagined. Our protagonist began to feel very scared. That villain is the Tentacle. From what he saw in Justice's apartment, he shouldn't be the one responsible. The hero who controls flames is now completely enraged and started to create fire with his hands. As flames spread across his body and through his wound, he said he would turn that villain into a great barbecue. Thanks to his great strength, he managed to charge fiercely at the villain. But just as he was within reach of the first blow, the tentacle man managed to escape, saying that hero was just a fool. Now that he had the advantage of being up high, he could send his tentacles toward him. 4 of those weapons were aimed at the Fiery Fists hero, who very skillfully began to use his flames for defense, avoiding being hit by any of those tentacles, creating the perfect opportunity to counterattack since he had seen several openings in that villain's defense. That's when the tentacle man began to smile. Surprising the hero, he managed to completely immobilize him using his tentacles. The boy is completely trapped, and even though he is very strong, he is unable to free himself from it. And the villain asked if he really thought he only had 4 tentacles just because he didn't see the others. That only proves he is an even bigger fool. Now that the hero has been practically neutralized, the people who were there fell into despair. Our protagonist cannot believe that Cian was defeated so easily. After having his body crushed, the hero's hands relaxed, as there was no longer any life in them. All that remained was his motionless body. Now that he had achieved his victory, the villain threw what was left of the hero away, because he could now dedicate himself to his next objective. The people who had not yet fled were paralyzed by fear, and the tentacles that were once attacking a superpower being began to create innocent victims. Vilas said it was time to have a little fun. While he attacks and hurts those people, our protagonist had hidden behind a table, and he is hoping that another hero will appear in that place immediately. On the floor, there was a magazine, and on its cover is the image of justice. Looking to the side, he heard some people talking that everything will be fine, that place is under the jurisdiction of justice, and he will soon appear. To the despair of our protagonist, he knows exactly what happened to that hero. This can only mean one thing. Everyone there is going to die waiting for a hero who will never arrive. The problem is that there is nothing our protagonist can do. That is a true villain. He is not up to that competition. Even though he was overwhelmed by fear, he heard something happening. A small child began to cry. The villain also noticed the sounds she made. Ju-won tried to warn the child to run away. She cannot stay still. Her life is in danger. Before she could do anything, the villain began to smile, saying that he would not allow her to escape from his tentacles. It is only a matter of time before the child is sent to Neverland. Ju-won fell into despair, for he began to remember what happened in his life. All he did at that moment was act. His only goal was to preserve that child's life. And while doing that, he began to think that he is a fool. He doesn't even know why he is doing this, believing that there is no way to stop that tentacle with his hands. But before he could touch it, traces of his ability began to manifest. His hand filled with strength, and he managed to hold the tentacle. As soon as that happened, the villain fell into despair, for he had found someone who could end his life. The hero of justice had appeared in that place. But in reality, this is our protagonist who also has no idea what's happened. He is feeling real power in his arm and is so impressive that it is at a different level. That strength seems to know no limits. Our protagonist managed to tear that tentacle as if it were made of cardboard. Revealing that it is organic matter, the villain felt a lot of pain from this. Justice said he does not know what is happening, but according to the first law of heroes and villains, he will punish that person. After our protagonist took on the appearance of justice, the villain became paralyzed. Ju-won is feeling great power throughout his body. He can barely control it all. The problem is that this is his first time fighting a supervillain. He does not know if he is capable of doing this. And even agonizing in pain, the villain said that the hero had not yet achieved his victory, showing him that he is capable of regenerating his tentacles as many times as he wants. All he needs is to grab the hero's body. That way, he will meet the same tragic end as that other kid. Ju-won watches as the tentacles seem to approach him in slow motion. Having seen them move before, he began to wonder if they had always been this slow. If their movement speed is like this, he will have no difficulty with it. Managing to move between the tentacles with even greater speed, dodging them is not hard. And in this way, our protagonist managed to get closer to that villain, having the opportunity to strike him definitively. Using his new power, he managed to crush that creature's face. In addition to the strength of his fist, there was great agility. The villain had no chance to defend himself. And before inertia could carry his body too far away, our boy grabbed one of those tentacles, pulling the villain's body back into his range of action. But our boy's intention was not to punch that villain again. He simply threw him towards the other wall, causing devastating damage to that delinquent's body. Ju-won began to wonder if this was right. He used so little force to move that guy, and yet the impact caused was impressive. The amount of strength he has now is almost ridiculous. And he realized that if he could not control the strength he possesses, it could cause a big problem. Even after being brutally struck, the villain manages to get back on his feet. Motivated by irrational fury, he decided to try to hit the hero who had easily subdued him once more. Ju-won is already prepared for this, feeling that he is now capable of fighting against villains. But just as he began to gather power again, he felt something strange in his hand. And he can't explain what was happening, but it was a strange feeling. The force he was able to feel overflowing completely disappeared. It was the same sensation he had when his hand began to change. Then he realized he couldn't maintain that transformation. This can only mean one thing: his situation had become complicated. If he doesn't do anything, the tentacled villain will soon strike his body. But while that man concentrates his fury on justice, he failed to notice that something else was approaching as well. A bright yellow energy struck the villain's body furiously. This time he was truly out of combat, and our protagonist also didn't know what had happened. A woman began to approach him, saying she managed to arrive at the right time. And judging by Justice's reaction, this woman believes he already knew she would arrive on time. believing that this was only possible because of his super hearing, thinking that our protagonist was just distracting the villain so she could deliver the final blow. Ju-won has no idea who this woman is, but he agreed with what she said while feeling relieved that everything had turned out well. While they were talking, the villain's tentacles began to move once again. Cursing everyone in that place, he started to execute his escape. But this time, the girl would not be so merciful with him. Firing the bright energy that emanated from her eyes, she completely incinerated what was in the abdomen of that criminal. Now that his body had fallen to the ground, she mocked him, saying it was too presumptuous for such a weak being to want to fight against justice. It was only then that the girl realized the hero had disappeared. As she lamented not having gotten an autograph, another woman began to approach her, saying that the girl should behave, because there were injured people at that moment. After receiving that reprimand, the girl began to help the victims of the villain. And that mysterious woman found it strange, wondering how justice was still alive. Moreover, she noticed that one of the victims simply started to run, fleeing from there. That is our protagonist, who is desperately running away from that place. At first, the mysterious woman found it strange, but she decided not to do anything. As soon as he arrived at his apartment, the first thing our protagonist did was destroy all those documents. He didn't expect there to be so much paper in that briefcase. After destroying everything, he put what was left in a trash bag, discarding the contents in the trash can near his house. Now that he had done that, he began to wonder what he should do in this situation. The #1 hero no longer exists, which can only mean that the person capable of doing that must be even more powerful. That occasion left him so confused that he forgot to transform before fleeing, but he was hoping no one had seen him. It was then that a voice responded to him saying it had seen everything, putting a boy on high alert. He looked around trying to figure out who had said that. And the voice continued saying that he made a point of destroying all the evidence, a sign that he thought a lot. Asking where the person was, the voice told him to look down, and the boy realized someone was emerging from his shadow. It scared him quite a bit, and Jun-woo fell to the ground. It was that mysterious woman who emerged from his shadow, complaining to our protagonist, saying he is excessively noisy. A pair of hands began to emerge from the shadow she had created, and they grabbed the trash bag that our protagonist had discarded. She tore the plastic bag, releasing its contents, letting everything fall to the ground. Our protagonist couldn't believe his eyes. That woman's ability managed to completely reconstruct all the documents he had discarded. It was then that she realized that this aligned with her assumption. That young man had also seen Justice's body. Apologizing for that, she said she couldn't allow him to leave there. Our protagonist noticed that those shadows were approaching his body. Determined not to let them reach him, he began to dodge. Realizing something that was slightly obvious, that woman wanted to end his life. Thinking that he had no other choice, he began to transform once again, prepared to fight for his life. If that person was responsible for ending Justice's life, there is no reason for him to hold back either. While continuing to dodge, he realized he wouldn't be able to grab those shadows as he had done with the tentacles. However, the situation remained very similar. All he needed to do was dodge the attacks and shorten the distance. Before he could do that, he felt his whole body begin to change. It was a familiar sensation for him. His body was unable to maintain that transformation, and our protagonist realized that he wouldn't be able to fight the way he had planned. To make matters worse, the tentacles of that woman had not stopped moving, and they managed to hit his body this time. Now that she had managed to hit him, the mysterious woman was already expecting something like this. The one in front of her was nothing more than a cheap imitation. She'd considered that there might be a bit more to discover since this boy tried to pass himself off as the real hero. Considering all of that a nuisance, she decided to attack even more intensely. Ju-won lost a good part of his transformation, but one of his arms remained very powerful, with enough strength to lift a boulder off the asphalt. As soon as he managed to lift that stone, the woman's attack was already upon him. Fortunately, Jun-woo managed to use the little strength he had left to block that attack. Thanks to his effort, he also managed to change the trajectory of that shadow tentacle, once again gaining the opportunity to counterattack. As he approached, the mysterious woman noticed that the boy's speed was good. To neutralize his attack, she focused one of her tentacles on that boulder. As soon as the stone turned to dust, our protagonist's super powerful arm was already prepared to strike her. Our boy managed to reach the woman's face. His strike wasn't precise enough to end the fight, but it did manage to tear the mask she was wearing. Ju-won realized that it was too quick, that he managed to surprise his opponent. If he wanted to have a chance at victory, he needed to keep pressing that woman. But his movement stopped abruptly. His whole body was paralyzed. He couldn't say why this was happening, and the mysterious woman said it was unfortunate. He had tried very hard, but couldn't avoid his own end. For he had entered her domain, and it was evident that our boy was stepping on the shadows she produced. Immediately, his whole body began to be enveloped by shadow tentacles that were able to lift him off the ground. Jun-woo was completely defenseless. As his body was being squeezed by that power, he realized he could no longer breathe normally. With the boy immobilized, the mysterious woman began to observe him more closely. It seemed she had come to some kind of conclusion, for after she snapped her fingers, our boy's body was released. He was no longer being immobilized. Jun-woo couldn't understand that and was trying to think of the reasons that would make her free him. She suggested that he should continue doing what he had done earlier, but our protagonist seemed not to understand. Then, holding him by the face, she asked if the boy had a desire to live a normal life, or if he would be interested in living as Justice from then on. For a brief moment, he began to consider that possibility. Even after saying that, she continued holding the boy's face with her hands. The hero Justice was a symbol for all of his fellow professionals. The news of his death could cause panic in society, and she needed someone who could buy time in that situation. Our boy seemed very confused. That woman had just tried to kill him, and now she was offering a suggestion on how he should live his life, but he didn't even know who she was. She said her name was Chrome, like the browser that feeds on RAM, a heroine who used to work for Justice. In the face of our protagonist, to disbelief, she said that his name should be in those documents. Junwo immediately began to read what should have been destroyed. It didn't take long for him to find an engraving of her. Indeed, everything she said was true. She also said that she was just trying to scare that boy. It wasn't her intention to end his life. Moreover, she needed to know if he would accept this job. For he would receive 1 billion wons every month. Our protagonist had no way to resist true superpower, money. Asking for details about that mission, he wanted to know what would happen if they were discovered. Chrome told him not to worry about that, as she would provide all the necessary support for him. The proposal was very tempting, and Junmo remained thoughtful. Chrome stated that she wouldn't force him to do anything. But a big problem would arise when the news of his death spread. The villains hiding in the shadows would certainly become uncontrollable, since the most powerful hero no longer existed. This could cause a great war between heroes and villains that would claim thousands of innocent lives caught in that crossfire. After that brief argument, Chrome asked our protagonist which option he thought was the most correct. And the truth is that he agrees with her. Justice has always been a reference for everyone, but he doesn't know if he is capable of doing the same as that hero. Not to mention that he also doesn't wish for innocent lives to be lost. In light of his silence, Chrome thought he was asking for something too difficult. Turning his back to Junwo, he said he had set his expectations too high, merely asking our protagonist not to spread the news about what happened with Justice. Before she disappeared, Junwo asked her to wait. He was silent because he was doing some calculations. My friend, the guy is driven by money. He said that 1 billion is too little for the risk he's going to take, not to mention the need for it to be something extremely confidential. So she should offer him at least 2 billion. Now with a smile on her face and presumably agreeing with Junwo's offer, she simply asked the boy not to change his mind soon. A week had passed since that conversation. Junwo is practically buried under so much information. There is a lot he needs to read. On those pages, he has encountered the name Justice so many times that it has already lost its meaning to his mind. Despite everything, he believes he has managed to memorize most of that content. Already outside his apartment, Chrome announced that it was time to continue their journey. They are in the car heading to another place, and our boy continues reading those notes. After reading all those documents, it is natural for him to have some doubts, telling her that he has a question to ask. He understands the part about keeping secrets from the villains, but he doesn't know if he should do that with the heroes as well. Those in high positions should know the truth. Chrome said that in a normal situation they would do that, but this circumstance is atypical. Our boy seems not to have understood her justification, and as the car stopped, the girl confirmed that soon he would understand everything. Junwo is now seeing a huge building. He asked if that is the distribution center. The two were heading inside. Junwo would like to know why they are there. Chrome said he was correct, that really is a distribution center. As she showed her identification to the camera, she also told him what it should look like from the outside. After her identity was confirmed, the doors opened. Inside that building is the hero's headquarters. Its interior is truly impressive. In the main hall, there is a large golden statue representing a hero, and several costumed people are walking around as if it were a big cosplay event or cosplay. Chrome told our boy that this is the atrium. It is easy for them to hide in a place like this, as shipments are always coming in and out of distribution centers. Junwo is impressed with the number of heroes that exist in that place, and each of them has a different ability. After walking around a bit inside, Chrome said they had arrived at their destination. In front of them was a large door. Since he was only a visitor that day, he should wait outside. She recommended that he not make any kind of fuss. As she headed inside, Chrome said that this is where they hold their meetings. Through the crack of the door, Junwo saw a large table and several heroes gathered in that place. He managed to identify the executives of the 4 hero factions that exist. The woman with blue hair did not tolerate being blamed for the recent activities of the villains. Her name is Haste, and she is second in command of the Guardians. The well-dressed man said that the area under her jurisdiction is being heavily attacked. He is Triumph from Ubermensch. And he said that this is not happening in the other jurisdictions, which would be very curious, suggesting that this woman is not doing her job well, while she claims that this man is always taking all the manpower. A guy who looks like a K-pop star said they should invest in what makes the most money. After all, the institution needs that. His name is Nibley, and he is second in command of Ubermensch. There is also a guy yawning with headphones on, ignoring that discussion. He is the leader of Arcadia. Junwo was trying to observe what he can, as he was impressed to see that meeting among the representatives of the heroes. But the truth is that his genuine impression of that is very realistic. Here is a big show of nonsense. The leader of El Condor, Zeus, said that something important is being ignored. Justice is not there with them. While he said that it has been a week since he has been absent, His second in command, named Pandora, seems to be playing with a teddy bear. The Pelper said that the rumors about Justice's death might be true. That left Haste genuinely irritated and banging on the table forcefully. She said that man should pay attention to what he is saying. She would not tolerate insults against Justice. Copper seems to have enjoyed the challenge as he revealed his power, flames shooting from his hand, stating that she is nothing without Justice. As things were getting out of control, Banshee, a representative of the Union, ordered them to be quiet. She appears to be wearing a uniform full of speakers and asked if they need to do this at every meeting, as they seem like children. Since they brought up the subject, Justice has indeed been absent for a week, they should consider that his life might be in danger. Looking at Chrome, she asked if the woman had any news about him. She said that Justice sent word that he would need to take some time for himself. Before she could finish speaking, Pandora called her a liar. She was already fed up with waiting for Justice's return, so she decided to go to his house. And what she found there left her very thoughtful. There was blood spread everywhere. Chrome asked if she really entered a private residence without permission. Meanwhile, Zeus, who seemed unaware of this, asked if it was really true. All the heroes were now looking at her. Chrome realized that this situation is very bad. If that girl really saw the crime scene, she cannot make up a story now. If things continue at this pace, everything could get complicated. It was at that moment that our protagonist made his grand entrance, asserting that all of this is true. Chrome did not expect his entrance in that place. Justice, who was actually Jungo, apologized for his absence all this time, and he said he would explain to all of them what really happened. Our protagonist is thinking that if he hadn't entered that room, they would have been discovered, and now he needs to deceive all these heroes, so that his plan can last a little longer. Junwo can only observe from afar, and he knows that those heroes are discussing something interesting, as a woman seems very agitated. He did not expect heroes to behave this way. It is very different from what the media shows about them. Even so, he thinks everything will be fine when he heard an insult. Someone was being called a liar. Then our protagonist returned to observe what was happening. It was when he saw Pandora say that there was blood everywhere. Zeus soon after asked Chrome if that was really true. She was cornered in that situation. There was no way to tell him the truth. Junmo was watching all of that happen, imagining that the situation would not get better than it already was, as the heroes were starting to argue quite a bit. At this rate, no one will believe what Chrome has to say, so he decided to use his power. When she was about to be questioned again, Junmo stepped in to validate what she had already said, causing all the heroes to see Justice himself. The one who was distracted with his headphones noticed that Justice seemed completely healthy. Chrome, on the other hand, was very surprised by that sudden appearance. She does not know what the foolish protagonist is doing. He may have stopped the heroes' questioning for now, but it only takes one mistake from him and all their planning will be over. Junmo realized that the hall is even bigger on the inside. He was not seeing all the heroes when he was outside, so he started to get very nervous. However, he already had extensive experience in deceiving people, pretending to be someone he never was. Junmo spent several hours analyzing those documents, studying Justice's behavior, even the way he used to walk and his specific tone of voice. Near to heroes, he apologized for being absent, and he deliberately placed his hands on the table to replicate the posture that Justice used to have. Junmo is sure he managed to perfectly replicate the characteristics of that hero. The culprit began to question our protagonist, asking how he is so confident arriving so late. He suggested that he should start giving explanations, starting with his house because it was a mess and where he had been all this time. Junmo is summarizing that they are probably already suspicious of that crime scene, so he will follow that narrative. He told everyone to listen that someone had tried to take his life. The other heroes began to murmur, struggling to believe that someone had tried to end him. Haste was immediately shocked by that information, as she's a big fan of Justice. She immediately asked why he had not mentioned this before, especially to her. Justice said he did not want to be rushed. Considering all the circumstances, he and Chrome needed to conduct the investigations privately. He also can't give many details about this right now, but as soon as he has more solid leads, he will share this information with everyone. Junmo thought that this speech was very good. Now he needs to tackle the next topic, and he turned his attention directly to Pandora. In an intimidating manner, he asked who had given her permission to enter his house. The girl began to cling to her teddy bear, responding that she was just worried. Justice sighed in disappointment, saying that now that things are public, continuing the investigation will be even more difficult, and the responsible party will manage to hide the evidence. Realizing that she had interrupted something very serious, Pandora apologized. Justice said that her hasty conclusions were disappointing. Junmo didn't want to have to reprimand a child, but he did so that she wouldn't question him further. It was then that suited hero said he didn't believe it, not understanding why anyone would try to end Justice's life. Moreover, everything happened in the middle of the city and no one was able to notice what happened. He suggested that they should verify these claims, believing that Justice could have planned all of that. Junwo felt a bit uncomfortable with that accusation, but Pandora came to his aid, saying that he wouldn't have any reason to lie as he didn't resemble that suited hero at all. Before our protagonist could thank her, the girl continued speaking. The villains keep escaping because they care about the citizens. She said they should end their lives too. That would preserve more lives in the long run. Zeus agreed with her, stating that they shouldn't hesitate any longer. there is no other solution. The villains are becoming bold because they underestimate the heroes, and Junwo began to think about all of this. He knew that those heroes didn't get along, but he didn't imagine that things were so intense. It was then that the guy with headphones asked everyone to listen. He believes that Justice has his own reasons for doing things this way, emphasizing that there is a big event that day, and they should postpone that discussion. His words ended up calming all those heroes, even though some wanted to continue arguing. Junwo realized that this task would not be easy at all. Already inside the car and in his original form, he was quite exhausted. That brief interaction had been too intense. Then the girl threw a can of soda at him, recognizing that our protagonist had done an excellent job. Even though she wasn't a big fan of that sudden improvisation, Junwo replied that it was better this way than for them to discover the truth all at once. In fact, he took the opportunity to ask her why everyone was so reactive with Justice. Crone revealed that the heroes are divided due to personal interests, and it's been like this for a while. The Guardians prioritize the safety of citizens above all else. Alcondor would like to end the right to live for all villains. That is their priority. Ubermensch are just some arrogant supremacists who believe their powers put them above everyone else. Lastly, there is the Union, which works only for its own interests. Junwo realized that in the end they resemble political parties a lot, but he had another question to ask. He wanted to know more about the type of personality Haste possesses. Crone said that she is second in command among the Guardians, a very young and talented hero. No one surpasses her in terms of loyalty regarding the hero Justice. Crone wants to know why he asked about this. Junwo said he noticed something when she mentioned the assassination attempt. At first, she seemed very surprised, but her eyes conveyed another message. It was as if she were hiding something. Junwo is very sensitive to this type of microfacial expression due to his abilities. Crone began to reflect on the matter, wondering if that woman could be involved in something, but our protagonist made it clear that he was just making a comment. Suddenly, everything in the car started to shake as if they had gone off the road. Crone informed our protagonist that they had arrived at their destination, and he, very surprised, began to ask where the hell they were. Already outside the car, Crone asked if he knew how the villains had become weaker since Justice appeared, even though the heroes continued to pressure the villains. Some want to end that situation once and for all. As they contemplated a completely devastated city, she said that operation is called Extermination of the Villains. All factions are participating in it. Still with many questions to ask, Crone stepped forward and said that the boy was right. It's time for the hero Justice to appear on that operation stage. Junwo immediately became worried. Crone told him that the hero Justice weakens the villains with his presence. There are a few enemy strongholds left, and they will attack one of them now. Each of the factions will attack from one front, and our protagonist needs to be the first to land in the square, which is located in the center of that fortress. Extending a small device to him, he said that our boy needs to contact her as soon as he arrives there, but he continues to hesitate. He doesn't know how he should face those villains, not to mention that he isn't confident about being the first to get there. He thought she would help him avoid being caught. That's when Crone invoked the power of capitalism, asking if our boy didn't want to receive those $2 billion. And as he had already told him, Justice is the #1 hero in the whole world. Junwo needs to learn to transform in this type of circumstance, otherwise they will eventually be discovered. Stating that $2 billion is not a small amount of money, he needs to earn that sum. As our boy begins to transform, he grabbed the communicator that was in her hands. As soon as he put it in his ear, he said he should receive a hazardous duty pay. Running towards his destination, he said the girl should be prepared, because he is going to collect every cent of the payment he is still going to receive. Looking over that city, it seems that everything is devastated. Several heroes are fighting criminals. It looks like a never-ending battle. The girl who can shoot lightning from her eyes just finished off another one of them. As soon as he arrived there, Junwo realized it seemed to be a one-sided battle. The heroes are winning, and Crone said this is due to numerical superiority. He realized that at this rate, there will be nothing left to do. That was when a heroine approached him. It was that girl from the first chapters. She is happy they have met again. She already knows that someone tried to end her life and is upset with whoever was capable of trying that. Junwo began to think that she really is a big fan. While the heroine shares words of motivation, our boy gives her a little attention. But his senses soon alert him to something. There was something approaching from behind him. The girl also saw it, but it was too quick for her to react. Our protagonist was already with his hand cocked, ready to finish off another one. He is so fast and brutal that that blow seemed too casual. His enemy was already on the ground as he was caught off guard while trying to surprise the stronger one. Junwo didn't use much power in that blow, thinking he could shorten his transformation time, but that is enough for weak enemies. The heroine who saw everything from the sidelines was left speechless. That was when our boy asked what her name was. The heroine said her name is Maxray. Junwo started running, saying he was in a hurry, mentioning that they could talk again soon. Towards his goal, he noticed that his path was blocked. Some criminals are prepared to attack him, but the weapons they were using were destroyed upon colliding with the solid body of that hero. Junwo didn't even bother to continue the fight, passing by them like a locomotive without brakes, finding ahead an enemy capable of spitting fireballs from his mouth. Our hero immediately stopped running and lifted one of his feet. Stamping the ground hard, he raised a large slab of asphalt which was able to function as a shield. Now he leaned one of his hands against that newly built wall. Striking it with all the force he had unleashed, the debris flew towards his enemy. The villain was defeated. In addition to being hit by the stones, he was buried by them. Junwo began to remember some things that happened in his past. His sister was a victim of a villain. At that time, he didn't have the strength to help her. He had to watch it completely helpless. He never imagined he would be able to absorb powers from dead people. If he had known about this ability before, everything could have been very different. Maybe his sister and his parents would still be alive, and they could live as a normal family. Seeing that he had been standing still for a few seconds, Chrome asked if everything was okay, and he replied that it was. He warned our protagonist that he would fall behind if he continued to drift like this. Junwo began to prepare to advance once again. As he shot even faster towards his destination, he decided he would use this power to save innocent people. Some villains are hiding further ahead, ready to surprise any hero passing by. They just didn't expect a large locomotive to pass between them. After the figure passed, one of them said he needed to chase after the hero of justice, while the woman said it was alright, since he was heading towards that other guy. Junwo continues to carve his path through the devastated city, and he realized that he was already arriving at the parking lot. Perhaps he would be the first to get to that place. But he was soon surprised by the arrival of a sharp object. Junwo had to stop his movements or he could have been hit by that spear. He began to observe an instrument that was embedded in the asphalt, and a man in a helmet started walking toward him, saying that even the hero of justice had appeared, which is a great honor. Chrome seems to be nervous. She asked if that is Kazar, and our protagonist does not know who that villain is. The woman said that this man is infamous even among villains, since he hunts heroes just for fun, having ended the lives of dozens of them. She said he might be stronger than our protagonist can handle. He should avoid entering into a direct confrontation. After receiving that advice, Junwo decided that he would just pass by his enemy. But Kazar is different from the others. That speed is not so fast for him. Acting as quickly as our protagonist, he stepped on the ground, creating some beams of yellow light. In the next second, he managed to grab the back of our hero's neck, throwing him away in the opposite direction of his goal. Junwo begins to get up, trying to understand what had happened. Kazar said he must forget the idea of fleeing, showing that there was something around them. Justice was now inside that villain's coliseum. Junwo felt that his body was very heavy. It could be some kind of negative effect of that space. And this left our boy with no choices. He cannot use all the power available, as that would end his transformation. But seeing that Kazar had recovered his spear, he also could not just do nothing. After trying to strike the enemy, he began to think that should be more than enough. Kazar was able to block the attack, saying that Justice has no chance of victory inside his coliseum. Junwo could not understand the nature of that ability and had to dodge the spear, which made a superficial cut on his shoulder. Definitely, his opponent this time is very fast. Kazar is prepared to advance against him once again, executing a piercing strike against our protagonist. Part of the spear's tip entered his abdomen. The blow was only not deeper because Junwo managed to hold the shaft of that weapon. That made Kazar very confident, believing that the hero of justice is not so strong after all, and he does not understand why everyone's afraid of him. To free himself from our protagonist's hands, he pushed him away with a front kick, saying that if justice were really to face him, he should use all the power he possesses. Junwo is sure that if he does that, the battle will be over in the blink of an eye, but controlling all that power will end up harming his transformation. He cannot take the risk of being left powerless in that place. Kazar began to feel underestimated. He decided to give some incentives to that hero. Making his spear shine brighter and brighter, surrounded by energy, he concluded that the death of justice would put an end to that offensive from the heroes. His most powerful attack was underway, designed to settle that battle. Apparently, the strike was accurate and precise. But Justice managed to hold the spear once again, without being injured this time, and he agreed with Kazar on one aspect. Before revealing his words, Junwo pushed his power to the maximum. It was at that moment that Kazar realized he should have left home with a spare pair of underwear. Superpower is like water in a glass. The more you use the content, the less you have. And the power of justice does not fit in a single glass as it compares to a vast ocean. Junwo has all that power at his disposal. Even so, he was forcing himself to conserve energy, preparing one of his fists. Kazar was already completely terrified. At that moment, he began to believe in all the deities he had ever heard of, as he needed someone to save him. He was immediately struck in the face, a brutal and devastating punch. It was not just his helmet that ended up dented. Junwo understood that Justice does not need to hold back on the power he uses. After everything that happened, Haste was very thoughtful. Her assistant asked why she was so agitated, and the woman asked if Justice had entered the scene. The assistant said he was a bit late. It could be that he had run into Kazar. Haste stood up and went to the window, as she knew that a difficulty like that should not delay him for so long. She decided she would see things for herself by going to the battlefield. Our protagonist had just landed a blow on that enemy's face. He was thrown back but was not knocked out. Kaiser began to regret what he had done, for that person standing before your eyes had completely transformed. Junmo realized that his effort to block all that power was what was hindering his transformation. He decided to let it flow through his body without restriction. Advancing once again to attack, Kaiser began to play defensively. All he could do now was try to block the fists of justice with his spear. But he couldn't keep up with his speed for long, receiving a sudden blow to the abdomen. Feeling that the things inside him would come out either from above or below, he didn't want to accept the fate of that battle. If one layer of his Colosseum ability wasn't enough, he decided he would put on a second layer. Justice tried to strike his enemy, but that villain managed to dodge this time. Seeing that the hero was slower, Kaiser imagined he had found an opportunity. He threw his spear at our protagonist, determined to finish him off. Fortunately, Junmo was overflowing with power, and instead of blocking that attack, he decided to strike the tip of the spear. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. His weapon was completely obliterated, as if it were made of glass. Now he couldn't believe the magnitude of that hero's strength. Moreover, the spear was unable to stop him. Our protagonist's fist continued toward the villain's face, which ended up receiving an even more powerful blow. He was definitely knocked out this time, as his Colosseum was destroyed with that hit. The villain's body fell to the ground inert, and our protagonist watched his defeated enemy. Now he could finally sigh, realizing that the fight had been very close. He knew he wouldn't be able to dodge the spear, so he took the risk of hitting it. It was great that it worked. Hearing sounds of debris flying through the air, Justice looked back, seeing that a large building had been toppled on the other side of the city. That was the work of the heroes from the El Condor faction. Confirming that they really didn't care about collateral damage, they were very violent. Another hero in the air ended up deflecting an energy ball. It passed over Justice's head and in its trajectory destroyed part of a building. All that volume of concrete was still heading toward our protagonist. Very worried about what could happen, he wondered if those heroes were not exaggerating. Justice realized he needed to act to save himself. That's when he remembered that there was an unconscious man in that place. If he left Kaiser on that street, he would probably end up meeting his own end. Our protagonist was thinking about what he should do in that situation. At first, he rejected the possibility of saving him, as that man had tried to end his life, so it was his fault for being knocked out now. Junmo didn't care at all about what would happen. But before the building hit that man's body, our protagonist picked him up in his arms and began to run. As he distanced himself from the destruction, he started shouting, wishing for that villain to become a good person when he woke up. The debris began to spread across that avenue, until our protagonist realized that things were getting too strange. The building that had started to fall stopped its trajectory midway, then fell in another direction. Junmo closed his eyes and covered his face with his arm to protect himself from the dust being kicked up. When he opened his eyes again, he saw that Chrome was there too. The woman had said she would provide support for him. While manipulating her powers, she said that our protagonist was making too much noise. Then her shadow tentacles began to protect them and push away the debris. Junmo began to sigh with relief. He was sure that this could have been a big problem. That's when Chrome asked if he had saved a villain, and if there was something wrong with him. Junmo said he couldn't just leave that man to die, saying that this is an action that true justice would also take. To their surprise, Kaiser had just regained consciousness. He managed to free himself from our protagonist, and very quickly immobilized the heroine who had appeared. Junmo was really worried about Chrome's safety, and Kaiser said it wouldn't end that way. Now that she was subdued, Chrome asked if our protagonist could understand things. That only happened because he tried to save a villain, and he couldn't beat justice if he did things halfway. He said that no matter what happened to her, he shouldn't allow Cesar to escape, because he is the main figure in that place, gathering all the villains. If Kaiser managed to escape, the whole operation would fail. That's when the villain began to get aggressive, asking what they were talking about while threatening the woman. Junmo realized that she was in life-threatening danger, and he said he would not allow that to happen. He began to calmly approach that villain. Kaiser started to provoke him, saying that our protagonist was showing some awareness, and everything happened in the blink of an eye. Chrome did not understand what had occurred. When she looked back, she saw that our protagonist had shoved that man's face into the wall. While doing this, Junmo remembered what had happened to his younger sister. In the end, a villain remains a villain. Looking at Chrome, he confidently stated that he would take responsibility for all his actions. The woman did not seem convinced, but she acknowledged that at least he does what he says. Besides, they were already running late, and he needed to contact the others. Dropping Kesar's body on the ground, Junmo became worried, as he had almost forgotten about that. Using the communicator, he introduced himself to the others. Justice, a representative of the Guardians faction, was the first to disembark at the destination. Soon after, our boy began to smile, saying that it was too easy to earn 2 billion. Crow knows that Cesar is an enemy with mental challenges. Even so, he is still a very skilled fighter. And she knows that our protagonist would not stand a chance against him by just using brute force. He may have progressed, but this is happening too quickly. Meanwhile, our boy crouched near that body, saying that it's good he isn't pretending. Chrome thought that our protagonist was motivated only by money, but she realized she could expect a bit more from him. Junwo, on the other hand, began to worry because that villain did not seem to be breathing. While they were down there, someone was watching them from above. Haste is the person doing this, and she seems to be suspicious. On her communicator, The secretary warned about the arrival of the hero Justice. Haste confirmed that she saw it with her own eyes. But it took some time before she could finally find him, and it was revealed to us that she left a sea of bodies in her wake. As she observed our protagonist, she thought there was something strange, and she seemed interested in discovering what it was. While they were walking there, Chrome asked why our protagonist was making a face, and he said he was very tired. It's great that he can maintain the transformation for longer, but he found out that it is very exhausting. He needs to find another way to overcome this problem. Chrome said that even so, he was able to use the power of justice properly, which is already an impressive feat. Junmo felt a bit uncomfortable with her smile. He wasn't expecting her to be so friendly now. That's when the woman asked if he decided to give it a chance, and he remembered her suggestion. He should try to touch another deceased body of a person with superpowers. Maybe he could absorb those abilities just like he did with Justice. Heading towards the nearest body, he decided to test that possibility. Before his figure touched that body, small sparks began to appear. Our boy immediately started to feel a great anguish in his head. That made him uncomfortable. Indeed, a reaction occurred, but he was unable to absorb the power. It seemed as if he was being rejected by something. Crone considered the possibility that he could only maintain one power, or that the force of justice was too great. Since nothing more than that happened, it is difficult to reach a conclusion. Even so, she assured him that he had behaved very well in that field exercise, and back at the hero's headquarters, she was about to open a door. Our boy asked if there was a party happening. Chrome assured him that is exactly what was happening. Junmo was impressed by what his eyes were seeing now. The Guardians were celebrating the victory of that day. They had plenty of reasons to do so. The other heroes, as soon as they realized that justice had arrived, were happy. They already knew that our boy had defeated Khazar. As few villains were left, some were happy that they would have less work to do and were thinking of fun things to do in their free time. Seeing the enthusiasm of those heroes, our boy asked if justice really has the trust of all of them. Wait a minute. There's a famous Tokuzatsu cosplayed among this crowd. Junmo said there was something very interesting to do in his free time for that hero. Drink. Right after that, he started to chug that large mug of beer. Outside, some people were watching that party. The Cape Helper was calling them all fools, seeing that they were enjoying the moment, and he asked his boss if they would allow this to happen. The man in the suit and tie left, saying they will do this while they can if the subordinate wants to know if he had prepared anything. Looking back, the man in the suit smiled, saying it's nothing special, but he is sure those smiles will disappear very soon. The next day, the alarm clock starts ringing as if it were an infernal noise. Our boy's hand hit the clock hard to make that noise stop. He is suffering from one of the most intense hangovers of his life. His head hurts a lot. Remembering what he did the day before, he realized those heroes can drink a lot. Then he looked at the large window in that apartment. This is the old apartment of the True Justice. Junmo is wondering if he will live there from now on, because the place is truly impressive and luxurious. As he explores the residence, he thought it was almost ridiculous, but it is expected of someone who was the #1 hero for so long. Remembering something very important, he grabbed his phone to check something. As soon as he checked his bank account, he realized he had received a hefty payment. Immediately happy seeing all those numbers, he finally reached the top. That was when he looked once more at that ominous chair. It was there that Justice spent his last moments. Just because he received his payment doesn't mean that situation is over. Justice was truly murdered, and he just received his autopsy report through Chrome. The examination was done amid the utmost secrecy, and there are no signs of any physical trauma. There is also no indication of poisoning. All that can be said is that he used his power before dying. This only makes the circumstances of his murder even more intriguing. Hearing sounds around the house, our boy looked back, asking if it was Chrome who was there, as the circumstance is perfect. He said he had analyzed the autopsy data she had brought, but so far, she hasn't responded at all. The person entering that apartment is Haste. Our protagonist hid in front of the sofa as soon as he realized this, as he became very worried. He can't understand why that woman is there. She entered the apartment way too casually. Haste started asking about Justice, saying she had heard a voice and wants to know if he is there. That was when she turned her attention to the armchair in the middle of the room. Knowing someone was on the other side, she asked what Justice was doing there. Our protagonist used 100% of his brain capacity at that moment while doing push-ups with just 2 fingers, saying he was warming up. Haste is impressed that he is exercising after a night of intense drinking. It's what is expected of the hero Justice. While he asks what she brought there without being called, he hid the autopsy document under the sofa. Haste wants to know about the assassination attempt. It has happened before, but he didn't talk to her last time. Junmo now understood why she wasn't surprised at the meeting, and it was to be expected that he had been a victim of this on other occasions. Haste started to sigh in relief. Surprising our protagonist, she hugged him kindly, saying she can't believe he didn't bother to reveal that to her. Junmo began to feel quite confused. He doesn't know what that woman is doing. Haste asked if he had already forgotten, because she had said he could call her whenever he was alone in his apartment. Junmo was in complete shock. He never imagined these two would have a relationship like this. Now that this woman continues to hug him, Junmo is paralyzed. Thinking that she might be Justice's girlfriend despite being in an uncomfortable situation, he felt envy for that lucky guy. But such information wasn't in those documents. He started to think she might be hiding this from him. Haste, seeing that he wasn't doing anything, asked why he was still standing there. Junwo is thinking about what to do. He doesn't know if he should call her by name as he is very confused. So he apologized to Yeon, saying he isn't used to that kind of behavior. She became very serious as if she were analyzing, until she asked if he was really sure about that. She said she feels sad when he calls her by her heroine name, claiming that she was acting too professionally, but what our boy didn't realize is that she was drawing her sword. A clean and precise strike was aimed at his neck. Junwo barely managed to avoid it. Haste said he almost managed to fool her with his act. Junwo realized the cut was so intense that the furniture behind him was sliced. That was truly very dangerous. Haste said that before attacking, she has more questions to ask. But for that, she thought about removing one or both arms that our boy possesses. Haste is not the second in command for no reason. She is only behind the position of the hero Justice. The power she has is truly formidable in combat, and our protagonist does not want to face her. Haste begins to destroy everything in the apartment, trying to hit our protagonist. All he can do is run away from that woman. Her ability is super speed. Junwo saw her cut those objects as if they were pieces of gelatin. In addition to being extremely fast, she also knows how to use a sword as a weapon. Haste is clearly focused on our boy, advancing against him once again. Junwo began to gather his power while asking her to wait. Blocking the sword with both arms, he said she should stop now. That was not enough to break her blade, but the woman needed to gain some distance. She recognized that our boy is very similar to the original Justice, but unlike the hero she knew, she continues to expend a lot of power. Junwo knows she is right, but it was using that power that prevented his arms from being cut off. And even so, he still suffered some damage. Not to mention that he cannot maintain this transformation for long. Junwo needs to act if he wants to survive. He decided that he needs to take the offensive while there is still time. He tried to hit that woman with his fists, but her speed is too great. Now she understands how Kizer was defeated, as he possesses ridiculously terrifying strength, but that will not be enough, since he is unable to hit his target, no matter how hard he tries. Haste passed by our protagonist once again, delivering a cut against him. Junwo felt the pain spreading through his abdomen. Haste said he should avoid blocking those attacks using only strength, as she could continue cutting his body for as long as she wanted. He would feel less pain if he remained still. Junwo asked if she would do the same if she were in his position. Then the woman charged at him furiously. The sword this time struck its target piercingly. Her blade entered the space between the black and our boy's shoulder. Surprised by what happened, Haste heard our protagonist acknowledge that he would not hit her with normal attacks. But now he managed to put his hands on her, and while the sword is piercing his body, he asked what she would do about it. The blow hit squarely on the heroine's face, but apparently that was not very effective. Junwo began to wonder what he might have done wrong. He did not feel that he had truly hit her. Haste now became more irritated. That person is pretending to be the real Justice and is now trying to interface. Junwo realized that the situation is becoming increasingly complicated. He needs to resolve this as quickly as possible. But before he could hit her, the woman disappeared with her sword. Still searching for her, he began to feel the pain from his newly acquired wound. Haste appeared behind him, stating that she would no longer hold back. Cutting just his arms off would not be enough. She vanished into the air, now using her wind blade ability. Junwo tries to find her, with no success, until his body began to be hit by several cuts. They were coming from all directions. Junwo was being harshly oppressed by her. He realized that things could get very complicated when he felt a much stronger blow coming from beneath his arm. Her sword truly began to cut into his flesh. That was when black tentacles appeared from the shadows. That ability belongs to Chrome, and it prevented our protagonist from becoming a one-armed man. Haste immediately realized what was happening, while our protagonist remains very confused. Chrome finally made her entrance, saying that Haste continues to be obsessed as always with the hero Justice. Haste asked if she was involved in this too, and it's good that she starts explaining soon, because those shadows would not be enough to stop her. Getting straight to the point, Chrome revealed that Justice was murdered. After hearing the whole story, Haste cannot believe that Justice was killed and that another person had taken his place. Junwo was already in his original appearance, stating that everything she heard is true. Chrome said there was no other choice. The only way to fill the void left behind was by doing that. Haste asked if they have any idea what they were doing. Even though Junwo has the power of justice, he is still an amateur, and he will not be able to maintain this act forever. It's only a matter of time before they are discovered. Chrome believes that with this, they will gain a little time. Junwo also wants to find the culprit and discover their motivations, and they need time to reach those answers. Haste said they don't have time. The killer will return to finish their work, which is what our protagonist said that this won't happen. At least they can't do that, as those in that room are the only ones who know the truth. Chrome also didn't understand what our boy was saying. They want to know how our protagonist can assert that with such conviction. Junwo celebrated when he brought this news to the heroes at that table. It didn't cause any kind of alarm. Haste realized that even if they don't know the identity of the killer, you must believe that the attempt failed. Junwo went further. There's no way they could know what happened. Even so, Haste brings her hand to her face in a sign of concern. She started walking toward the exit, and Chrome asked where she was going. Haste said she doesn't know how far they managed to push that act, but they will need someone to clean up the mess. Now that she has left, Junwo said she must hate him. Chrome merely recommended that he not think too much about it. There isn't a single hero as loyal to justice as that woman, and she must be feeling very overwhelmed with everything she has discovered. The only traditional heroes are those from the Guardians faction. Justice was what united them all. Without it, it's only a matter of time before the faction crumbles. Chrome doesn't know if the heroes will deserve that title after this happens. Some resemble mobsters with superpowers. That's why they need to continue with this act, so the heroes keep behaving like heroes. It's also the only way for the citizens to have some kind of hope. Junwo had been wondering for some time what motivated that woman, and now that he knows her true intention, he seems to be very pleased. He told her not to worry about anything as he has already witnessed how he can deceive others, and he will continue doing so. In the middle of his speech, Chrome's phone rang, and she said it was time for our protagonist to carry out his second mission. They went to a restaurant and the plate of justice is already in front of him, but our protagonist seems uncomfortable. While they are there to eat, the people around are impressed to see justice. Junwo looked to the side, and the other heroes who were impressed began to pretend they weren't seeing anything. Whispering to Chrome, he started asking about this mission, and she said he is already doing it. Justice was almost assassinated, so they need to show everyone that he is okay and alive. Junwo understands this part of the mission, but it's hard to eat when so many people are looking at him. Chrome assured him that you will get used to it soon, and that it will be necessary. That day, the recruitment of new heroes will happen. Junwo didn't even know this was going to take place. Then Chrome pointed to the side. Our boy saw some people walking through the building. Those are new heroes, and this is the biggest event hosted at the atrium. It's where the new heroes decide which faction they will join, almost like university students joining the clubs that exist. The difference is that this is much more important than a college. Junwo agrees with her. That event is extremely important. He just doesn't know what he should do now. He asked if he needs to fight another villain. Chrome got up from the table and asked him to follow her. As soon as they arrive at their next destination, she will tell him everything. The two had gone to what seemed to be a large stadium. Chrome nudged our boy, saying he should have a less impressed facial expression. Justice wouldn't do that in his place. A bit more restrained, he revealed that he didn't expect something so magnificent, and there are more heroes in that place than the last time he came to that building. That's when he asked again what he should do. Chrome was categorical in her response. Absolutely nothing. And she asked if our boy understood. Junwo remains confused while she says that the strongest hero doesn't need to show himself on that occasion. He just needed to sit and do nothing. Junwo found that task quite boring, so he started looking around, identifying some heroes he had seen at that meeting. The factions were all divided. He noticed that the Union and the Übermensch are the ones with the largest number of heroes. Chrome stated that the Guardians are on the weaker side. Everyone wants to be rewarded for having powers. While they were talking, Haste appeared near them. Junwo was surprised that she came, and the heroine told him not to misunderstand things. Just because he is acting with them doesn't mean he is comfortable with this situation. Junwo thought that he wasn't doing it because he wanted to either, and she shouldn't act as if he were responsible for the hero's death. Chrome said that the ceremony is about to begin. In the middle of that arena, there are two people, and a voice thanks everyone for their patience. A match between the Guardians and the Übermensch is about to start now. Among those two heroes in the arena, the shirtless man is the first to try to attack, covering his fists with stones. But he was unable to hit his opponent, who used that big opening to prepare his counterattack, hitting the stomach of that shirtless man with energy. Despite taking the hit, he remained standing. He even praised his opponent's strength, but the pink-haired man remains very confident. This time he directed his power to the ground of the arena. Gaining a great boost from that, he managed to close the distance between them. Junwo asked why they were fighting, and Chrome said it was because of recruitment. It's a way to gather new heroes for their faction. Junwo asked if it was a friendly match, and the woman said that those fights are not that friendly. That's when he noticed that the shirtless man's hand was already injured. The other hero began to crush his fingers. Junwo became very worried about what he was seeing. He almost acted at that moment, but was stopped by Chrome. Looking at our protagonist, she asked if he understood that he shouldn't do anything. Junwo couldn't believe they would allow that to happen, as it had ceased to be a match. Chrome said that it is also a power battle between the factions, and so far, no rules have been broken, so they are not allowed to intervene, even if he is the justice. Our protagonist still does not like what he is seeing. The pink-haired man suggested that his opponent surrender before his hand was completely destroyed. He continued doing that on purpose just so his opponent would feel pain, ensuring that he would completely crush it. That's when someone stopped him from continuing. Chrome brought her hand to her face in disappointment, while Haste asked what he was doing. Junwo remembered his younger sister, who was excited about his future as a hero. She wanted to know if he would hang out with those cool guys. He asked if she was talking about the atrium. If that's the case, probably. A bit upset, the girl said she wanted to go with him too. It's not fair that he has fun alone. Junwo told her that he wouldn't go alone, because he would take his sister with him when he goes there too, which made the girl very excited. And the two made a promise. She believes that there are several heroes who punish bad people in that place, and she feels very safe around them. Justice said that they exist to give hope to people. Tormenting a fellow professional that way is not right, and asked if that hero doesn't feel ashamed of himself. His words caused a stir among the people, who began to debate about it. That's when the pink-haired hero asked what he was doing. No one had allowed him to interfere and ask if our protagonist had come there to protect his faction mate, saying that they didn't need to do that, but that man's hand was quite injured. Justice repeated that he had ordered him to stop, and the pink-haired man asked what he would do if he didn't stop. Extending his hand to our protagonist, he began to gather his power once again, firing his attack at him. That man has the power to push and pull things however he wants. Justice was foolish for grabbing his maneuver when he was fully charged, believing he would send him flying through the air. But our protagonist was out of patience. Using a bit of his physical strength, he began to crush that fragile arm. The pink-haired man started to become quite distressed, and Justice asked what was wrong with him, warning that to surrender he only needed to raise his right hand. But apparently he is unable to do that now. Our protagonist did to that hero what he was doing in that battle. While his arm was being slowly crushed, the colorful-haired hero was screaming like a newborn. That's when the leader of his faction decided to show up, stopping Justice from continuing with that. He said that our protagonist's behavior was very unpleasant. He began to gather his power in the palms of his hands, asking if Justice really wanted to fight, firing that energy at him. Our protagonist, due to the impact, took a few steps back, and the leader of that faction said that Justice should face someone of the same caliber. All the heroes present began to get excited about the fight. Triumph and Justice were about to exchange blows. Haste was very worried. She didn't want to see Justice's image tarnished in that way. Crone was already expecting Haste to lose control. Juin still couldn't master all that power. All he knew how to do was unleash all his strength like a fool. And Triumph was the worst kind of opponent he could have at that very moment. Our protagonist tries to tell him that it's unnecessary for them to fight, but the half-baked supremacist was already excited. He couldn't ignore what had happened. Giving up was not an option. Juwon didn't want that to happen, but with no other option left, he began to unleash all his power, charging directly at his fellow professional. He managed to land a punch, which was blocked by Triumph, as if he were holding a baseball, commenting that despite Justice's words, by his actions, it seems he wants to take this seriously. While manifesting his power as well, he said he didn't understand his reasons. Juwon began to feel that power was leaving his body. Triumph made it clear that it was his turn to take the offensive, hitting our protagonist in the stomach. Juwon was able to block that impact, but as a result, he noticed that his arm felt a bit numb. Taking the offensive again, our protagonist threw several punches at his opponent, and they were as effective as the act of drying ice. Triumph retaliated again, hitting our protagonist with his ability. As Juwon got back up, he realized that his suspicions had been confirmed. His own power was being used against him. Triumph asked our protagonist if something was wrong. That posture didn't seem like him. In fact, it was much more pathetic than usual. Now our protagonist could only defend against those blows. The heroes in that arena noticed that he was being pressured, which made them wonder if something was really happening. Chrome had already expected something obvious like him being pressured to happen. All of this was due to Triumph's ability. Absorption. That's what he is capable of doing. He absorbs the power of any type of attack, using it as if it were his own, no matter how hard he is hit. He simply redirects that energy back to whoever sent it. Chrome realized that this fight was going to be completely one-sided. Juwon was already a bit exhausted, as one moment he was taking hits and the next Triumph was striking, until the supremacist asked why Justice wasn't doing anything. He didn't even seem like the strongest hero, the beloved of the Guardians. And people began to say that he was right, Justice wasn't fighting back. Our protagonist only became more irritated. These people were talking, but he was really trying to fight. He ended up being very reckless as he had just become a hero. All he needed to do was stay quiet and collect his money. Triumph asked if he was just going to stand there getting beaten. Juwon wasn't going to let that man act like a mobster. He wanted to fight against that too. Once again, the two clashed, but our protagonist was determined to stop him. Triumph said that if Justice came at him with all his strength, it would only end one way. But he noticed that there was something a little different this time. That was a lot of energy. Juwon knew he couldn't fight like the original Justice. There was only one thing he was capable of doing. So he unleashed more and more energy into Triumph's hands. That enormous amount was causing great difficulty for him. Triumph wasn't able to absorb it all. And gradually, his body began to overload, trying to absorb that energy while our protagonist generated more and more. The impact of the two was causing gusts of wind that spread throughout the arena. Chrome was already impressed with the direction that battle was taking. Even with so much power being produced, Triumph was still able to hold it. The two needed to stop that fight soon, or this whole place would be completely destroyed. It was then that Justice and Triumph felt something begin to happen. All the gravity in that place had increased significantly. Juwon realized that his body was much heavier than usual. Another hero had entered the scene, asking what they were doing there. Because the way the fight was going, everything would be destroyed by the two of them. Juwon knew that this skinny kid was the leader of the Union faction. After he appeared, he was unable to move his body at all. The kid told them to stop with that pathetic scene. As soon as he released the two from their abilities, they began to regain their composure. Triumph turned his back on our protagonist, visibly shaken by what happened. Juwon was also leaving the arena, thinking that he shouldn't have intervened in that. The hero who had hurt his hand apologized as he believes everything that happened was his fault. Even so, he was grateful to have been helped. Justice told him it was nothing. Before he could explain himself, he realized something was happening. Many of those heroes had greatly appreciated his intervention, including the newcomers who now consider him even cooler than before. In the end, his intervention resulted in a positive outcome. Back in his apartment, Hayes slammed his hand on the table with a stack of papers. Junmo asked what that was, and Hayes said it was the number of heroes who had joined each of the factions. Crone said that thanks to what Justice did, it wasn't a complete disaster. Still, it remained a defeat. The Guardians are the faction with the fewest members. While analyzing those numbers, Junmo asked if it was usually this bad. Hayes said no. In the friendly match, their faction's hero really lost. But there aren't many villains these days, which is why there aren't many heroes wanting to join the Guardians. At this rate, Ubermensch will become increasingly influential. Junmo wanted to know if that was really a bad thing, and Chrome asked if he still remembered they were supremacists. They would certainly accept even villains as long as they had power. He asked what he thought would happen if they took control of the atrium. Junmo began to think about it and asked if they could form an alliance or something like that. Chrome just didn't know with whom they could do that. Alcondor is too violent, the Union only thinks about profit, and there's no need to say anything about the supremacists. Haste thinks the only possibility is an alliance with the Union, but they would never work for free. Chrome said they need someone infiltrated there. Junmo believes this is a very easy problem to solve. Haste doesn't know what he's talking about. Our protagonist said that being two people at the same time will be laborious. That's when Chrome realized what he was trying to do. Showing his phone to both of them, he revealed the price for an infiltrator. Exactly 2 billion, the same amount they are paying for him to be Justice. On top of a building, some heroes are enjoying life quite a bit. There's even a DJ playing there, and very well-drawn women sunbathing. Junmo was in the building next door with Chrome, asking what they are doing there. And she said they are there for Wilhelm. He is number 3 in the Union faction. Unlike the other factions, the position of heroes in the Union is determined by each one's popularity, and that man doesn't work as a hero. But he has many connections as he hosts big parties daily. The Union members will have a vote that night. Wilhelm will also participate in this event. Junmo asked if she wanted him to manipulate the outcome. Looking firmly at our protagonist, she asked if he was sure about that and if he had a plan. Junmo revealed that he wasn't very proud of it, and he began to observe a woman who stood out among the crowd, assuring Chrome that he has his own methods. The party continued, even under the moonlight, until a man pointed up. Finally, Wilhelm had arrived at that place. After grabbing the microphone from the DJ's table, he greeted everyone present. He asked if the party was good, saying there is no law preventing heroes from having a good time whenever they want. After all, everything he does in life is party, and his guests began to laugh at that lame joke. As he said they would keep going at that pace until sunrise. With everyone shouting his name, Wilhelm said goodbye. The man who was with him asked if the guy hadn't drunk too much, but Wilhelm assured him he was just getting started with the drinks. That's when he looked once more at the man accompanying him, wondering who dressed like that to go to a party, and the guy said he was there as his bodyguard. Wilhelm thought that was a waste. He didn't want to be next to someone so boring, not realizing that a very well-drawn woman was approaching. He was hoping to find a beautiful girl when he bumped into that woman. His first reaction was to be upset because that outfit was very expensive. The woman apologized for what happened, saying she had probably drunk quite a bit. She said she would clean up that mess for him, but the noble player noticed she was very well-drawn, telling her that this kind of thing happens. But the woman began to touch his skin, suggesting they go to a quieter place so she could clean him very slowly and carefully. Wilhelm realized that his team was being called to play, so he took that woman to another location, telling his bodyguard to take care of things in his absence. But that man was too focused on his work. Wilhelm typed a password to open the door, showing that woman what his suite looked like. He was eager to start the cleaning soon and ended up not noticing that the woman's arm had transformed. Using part of the Justice power, our protagonist put that man to sleep. The first part of his infiltration plan was completed. He was sure that the jerk would be completely taken in by the beauty of that woman. Once inside the room, he began searching for the guy's tablet. He finally managed to find the object. To access it, biometric data is required. Junwo realized that the man values security despite his carefree appearance. Since he is capable of taking on his form, getting through this will be very easy. The faction meeting was already underway, and their leader said that Wilhelm had shown up very early. In fact, he was impressed that he had appeared. Our protagonist said he was in the middle of a big party. Anyway, he asked if Wilhelm knew what the vote was about. They needed to know if they would collaborate with the Guardians in the next Heroes meeting. This would be decided through voting. However, the votes are proportional to each of their popularity. Our protagonist did not expect something like this. It almost seems like a reality show. Then he remembered Chrome's words that there are fewer villains recently, and they must be divided about this. He believes that Wilhelm's votes will be enough to change the outcome. Finally, the voting is concluded. Their leader began checking if they had really finished, and it seems he became suspicious about something. Someone asked him if something was wrong, and he started choosing his words. saying that the result of that vote was unexpected, to say the least. Anyway, they wrapped up the day's program and will reveal the voting results. Leaving that meeting, our protagonist began to sigh with relief. Outside, Crone was anxiously waiting for the outcome of his infiltration. Our protagonist finally approached her, asking if the girl had been waiting for a long time, but she wanted results. Junwo still wasn't sure how to tell her this, but he had just earned another 2 billion for the task he had completed. Wilhelm finally began to wake up in his suite. Feeling pain all over his body, he was sure he had drunk too much. His bodyguard asked if he didn't remember anything, and the guy confirmed, as he was sure that woman was simply wonderful, and apparently he even attended the faction meeting, which caused some surprise for the bodyguard. Wilhelm took that in stride. He must have shown up, voted, and then his mind's circuit breaker went down. He just wanted to remember that woman who was with him. Since he was suspicious, the bodyguard asked his boss for the guest list from the previous day's party. Inside the apartment, Junwo was looking for some things. He went to the wardrobe, thinking it might be there. Looking at those clothes, he asked if he should take those too. Since he would be working for Justice, he needed to take all his necessary belongings to the Justice apartment. Even though Haste agreed, he didn't like that idea at all. Junwo had many old clothes and thought he could start buying new things since he now had money for that, until he found a hidden portrait under those clothes. After he took it in his hands, he began to think. It was a photo of his family, and he didn't know where he could keep it. Seeing his sister would certainly be very anxious to see that he was Justice. He decided he would take the picture frame, but it broke in his hands. The photo fell to the floor and slid under his bed. Staying where it was, he realized he wouldn't be able to reach it easily. He would need to lift the bed, which was already very heavy. As soon as he tried to do that, something simply amazing happened. He threw the bed up. Junwo had no idea why that had happened. As soon as he met with Chrome, he told her what had happened. She seemed interested in that, and our boy decided he would demonstrate for her, grabbing a pen that was on the table. Breaking that object was easier than tearing a sheet of paper. The woman noticed that the boy was using the Justice power in some way. It could be that the ability he possesses is still awakening. Our boy asked what she meant by that. Crone explained that superpowers are like muscles. The more you use them, the stronger they become. This is very noticeable when the heroes are beginners. He must have always thought that his power was to copy the appearance of others, when in fact his potential is much greater than that. But now they should focus on something else, as today is the time for them to return to work. A virtual meeting is being held with the leadership of the heroes. The boy with headphones apologized for doing that through his webcam. He had an urgent matter to resolve. The cop star said that in this meeting only one thing will be addressed, where they will put the strength of the heroes. And before he could continue, the boy with headphones revealed that he had something to say. The Union faction will cooperate with the Guardians this time. The cop star found that sudden stands too much, and the boys said that they decide everything in their faction through voting, deciding what they would contribute to the Guardians in this opportunity. And as the leader of his faction, he will honor that commitment. After hearing that, the pop star found it a great absurdity. Zeus was in that meeting, but his body was fighting some villains, and he had a question for Nibley, if he had any particular reason to be against the destruction of the villains. And Nibley, who looks like a pop star, stated that they already destroyed their headquarters in the last operation. Continuing down that path is a waste of resources, when Justice was categorical in saying that he disagrees with that. The villains may seem defeated, but they will gather their forces soon. They need to take advantage now that they are all scattered, preventing a larger plan. The Union agrees with that, and Pandora asks if Nibley wants to help the villains. Before he could bring more arguments, someone told him to stop. It was the head of his faction, recognizing that it is advantageous to celebrate all the villains as well. Because in the next votes, some factions will not change their minds, using the villains as an excuse, so it would leave it to the Guardians to lead that vote. Haste does not like his stance, always acting in his own interests, while our protagonist sighed in relief as everything worked out somehow. Back in his apartment, Chrome saw the big hole in the ceiling. That is definitely not good, and that is what our boy tried to tell her. She asked what he will say to the owner of that apartment. Our boy said he will have to bear the loss. His life has been very hectic since he became Justice, and now that he thought better about the matter, he asked why she is doing that too. At least our protagonist is being paid, but she has no reason to go that far. Chrome said she already explained that justice is necessary to keep the other heroes in line. Junwo agrees with her, but this is a dangerous job, and he was wondering if she has any personal reason for all this. Those words seem to have found refuge deep within that woman. Turning her back to our protagonist, she said that there is no specific reason. Junwo began to wonder if he had been too personal in his statements. He thought he should have kept his mouth shut, and now he will focus on cleaning up that mess. Only outside his apartment was a man who was not invited. Junwo soon recognized him. That is the bodyguard who was present at his last task. And the man immediately recognized Chrome, a heroine from the Guardians faction. He did not expect to find her there, and she said she was just visiting a friend, but is curious to know what he is doing there. This man is named Stylato, and he seems to have paid attention to the part where she talked about the friend Juwon Lee, who is 23 years old, who has the ability to steal someone's appearance. It seems to be a very interesting ability to have, and he was thinking about that. He wanted to know why he went to that party the day before. Our boy tries to change the subject, but the bodyguard has already analyzed all the data from that area, including the cameras. He approached Wilhelm disguised as a woman and managed to see the moment he changed his form. Junmo realized that he ignored one of the cameras. He said he is not a big fan of Wilhelm and just played a prank on him. Stylido asked if he really just played a prank because he does not like him, asking directly to our protagonist who he's trying to fool with a prank when he transforms into Justice. He is not so sure about that, but he has a particular hypothesis. In front of them, he removed one of his teeth. Chrome took a defensive stance as she knows what that means, and the man threw the freshly pulled tooth in their direction. The fragment of the tooth began to tremble, exploding before reaching them. The tooth seems to have turned into a large mass that was able to completely trap that woman. Stylido now also has a bottle coming out from the middle of his hand. In a threatening manner, he wants to test his hypothesis, even if it means killing our protagonist in the process. Saying that Chrome was trapped, our boy asked what that man was doing. Stylido said he already told him, he just wants to confirm a personal hypothesis. He was already suspecting that Justice was behaving strangely. He had also mentioned something about the assassination attempt, but something made him start to doubt. Justice's right arm is meaning someone capable of copying the appearance of others. Everything is becoming increasingly suspicious. Then he charged at our protagonist. Junmo barely dodged that blow but ended up being superficially cut. Shortly after that, he managed to gain a bit of distance, feeling his skin burn in the neck area. He was upset with the heroes he met, all of them trying to end his life without really knowing him. Stylido said his theory is that our protagonist is pretending to be the real Justice. Now our boy understands what his motivation is, claiming that this is nothing more than a very flimsy hypothesis. Stylido seems not to have liked that answer, and now he will make our boy reveal everything, using pain and violence as tools for that. He walks patiently towards our boy. Junwo, caught in that situation, has already ruled out that hero as a suspect in Justice's murder. And gathering power in one of his hands, he doesn't care about that conclusion, because he doesn't want to lose his payment of 2 billion by revealing the truth to him. Lacking battle experience, his strike was intercepted. Stylido said he is terrible at manipulating his own power and is full of openings. If he had been using Justice's power, any movement would have worked, and our protagonist said he had picked the wrong guy. Stylido began to prepare to stab him, saying that our boy will be in trouble if he continues hiding his power. And that is about to happen. Executing a perfect move, he struck our protagonist, who, relying only on his reflexes, managed to hold that bone stake. But by being too focused on that, he ended up being knocked down by the hero. Junwo was in a very risky position now. To get rid of that aggressor, he used one of his legs to kick him away. As he moved away, our boy managed to get back on his feet once again, seizing the opportunity to hold him with both hands. Stylido began to think that the boy is not hiding the power he possesses. Maybe he just doesn't know how that power manifests. Junwo seems to have started thinking about those words. Stylido said that those who are weak desire to be stronger, so that people will pay attention to them one day and abilities manifest according to each person's desires. Using power in an uncontrolled manner without knowing the basics is a great waste. Even so, he praised our boy's attempt to prevent him from using the bones in his hands, but that is not the only place he can do that, revealing the bones in his elbows, which almost hit our boy in the face. To avoid being hit by them, he had to let go of that hero. Taking advantage of being too close, he lunged at him, grabbing his waist. In this way, he began to run towards the wall. The hero's body crashed with full force against the bricks. Shortly after that, our protagonist held him by the face, striking his face with a powerful knee, causing a huge noise. Junmo felt his knee quite painful after that. Stylido asked if he knows what the hardest part of the human skeleton is. Showing that he has a mask over his face, he said, is the skull. Now our protagonist knows why he had hurt his knee. He is upset because he was unable to cause any damage to that hero, and maybe he might actually be right. He has only focused so far on not being caught and putting on a perfect act. He can only imagine that incident as a great stroke of bad luck in his life. But there was something inside him that made him constantly hate himself, the fact that he had not been able to help those in need. And he began to wonder what he has been doing so far after receiving such overwhelming power. Stylido said that just because they are talking, the boy should not let his guard down, and he was almost behind him. Junmo was surprised by a blow that came from behind but managed to dodge, thinking that this fight is not something he can win. There is only one thing he can do now. Trying to land a punch on that man's face, he ended up destroying the wall. It was then that he felt something sharp near his neck. Stylido said once again that this is not enough to defeat him, but our boy said he was wrong, for he was not aiming for that man's face, revealing that he had freed Chrome from her dental prison. Immediately, her shadows began to emerge. They trapped Stylido instantly, leaving him paralyzed. Chrome thanked our protagonist for what he had done, saying she was starting to feel suffocated in there. She did not like being trapped in that disgusting tooth at all, suggesting that Stylido should be prepared for the consequences of his actions. Stylido was still trying to free himself from that prison, but the more he tried to move, the tighter those bindings became. Now he understood the advantage of our protagonist. He is very good at using his own head to solve problems. So he asked if he remembered what he heard earlier, producing a bone in his forearm which began to cut through it. Once again free, it was not just his hands that could produce bones. Heading directly for Chrome, determined to defeat her, and she was already prepared for that, sending her shadows in his direction. Stylido made a bone shield to avoid being hit. Shortly after that, he broke the tip of one of them that was protruding from his hand. He used it as a projectile, which was thrown towards the woman. She barely avoided being hit in the head. Feeling the gravity of the situation, she became even more enraged. Styleto was about to strike her in the face with one of his bone stakes, but she disappeared without him noticing, emerging from the shadows behind him. The battle between these two heroes is very intense. Junwo is impressed with the technical level of both. It seems they are on the same level. Styleto had expected something like this from the right hand of justice. She uses shadows to attack and manages to gain distance whenever he approaches. He decided he would rip out other teeth for that, throwing all of them in the direction of that woman, and just like before, they began to crack, expanding as they got closer to her. Chrome already knows how that works, so it wouldn't work twice. She managed to avoid being hit, but she ended up losing sight of Styleto. Immediately, she began to search for him. When she felt his presence, she realized it might be too late. Styleto was about to surprise her with an attack. Chrome had little time to defend herself, so she immediately used her shadows, and with them, she tried to push him away. But the force of gravity aided Styleto, who managed to strike her with a knee, and he is ready to continue his attack. However, Chrome used her shadows once again to push him away. This time she managed to hit his body, but the hero made a kind of bone armor to avoid being struck. That was able to protect him entirely. She decided she needed to increase the power she was manifesting even more, creating large shadow tentacles. About to attack him, she was curious to see if Styleto could withstand that, for she was using one of her most powerful abilities. The massive shadow is so large that it looks like a creature about to completely engulf that hero. Styleto had no way to dodge it. After the impact occurred, there were several debris scattered around. Even so, the hero continued to move. He managed to position himself behind Chrome. He was about to strike her, and this time she might not be able to defend herself. Junwo was very scared by this, but she assured him that everything was fine, for she also had the hero cornered, as one of her shadows was about to pierce him from behind. Now that they were in this Mexican standoff, she said that was enough, asking if Styleto agreed, since she recognized that he did not truly intend to stab her that way. Junwo noted the posture of both. Chrome commented on when he had thrown that piece of bone, which almost hit her in the head. She was irritated at that time because she could have been hit. Styleto didn't do it because he didn't want to. And now regarding the agreement on that, she asked what he was planning. Styleto began to say what he had inferred from the information he gathered. The assassination attempt against the justice she said had failed was actually a success. He was no longer among the living. Showing them a small chip, he said that is what contains the recording in which our protagonist transforms. He had worked hard to obtain that evidence. If he shows that to the public, their act will come to an end. Then he destroyed the chip in front of them. Junwo did not understand why he did that. He thought they would be threatened or extorted by this hero. As soon as the crumbs fell to the ground, Styleto stepped on them with his foot, saying that it's not a bad idea for them to start working together, ensuring that they are much more alike than they think. Chrome asked him to explain those words better, and he said he was working as a bodyguard for the Union faction. But just like them, he is doing this as a spy for the El Condor faction. Our boys were not expecting a revelation like that. Styleto said that the Guardians and El Condor are being pressured by the Union faction and the Ubermensch. The villains are no longer the priority. Some heroes are only thinking about lining their own pockets. That's why he infiltrated the Union, to change a few things from the inside. That's why he needs allies he can count on. Junwo asked if he is really suggesting that. Styleto confirmed that the three will infiltrate that faction, and they will change the situation in their favor. Chrome asked what the guarantee was that he doesn't have that recording saved elsewhere. That's something too easy to do. Styleto said it's up to them to decide whether to trust it or not, revealing that he liked their skills a lot as this could be used in various places. It's fine if they don't accept his proposal, but he has a job to do. If they are not on his side, they will be against him. And to make it clear to them, the two together are not capable of defeating him. Chrome thinks he is being overly confident. Junwo asked if he has any idea what he just asked, revealing what he is really working on as a substitute for justice. That's why he needs to find out who is behind the murder. If they work together, that man can be dragged into this problem. Junwo wants to know if Styleto is aware of all the risks besides agreeing he liked the possibility of killing the villain responsible for the murder of justice. In fact, that's the part that interests him the most. Junwo realized that if he is a member of El Condor, that was already predictable. It might not be so bad to trust him. The hero is waiting for their decision. Our duo is thoughtful for a few moments, until Junwo said he would like to hear what he has to say, as he wants to know what his plan is. Styleto is visibly excited about that new alliance. Elsewhere, someone is checking the identity of our protagonist. The man asked if he is one of the new heroes. After passing the inspection, our boy said that it would work anyway. He made sure that the fake document looked very convincing. Now he needs to look for something. The atmosphere in that environment is definitely very different from what he felt with the Guardians. The heroes walk around there quite casually. Someone told him that the Union is a business group. That's why people don't walk around in costumes. And our protagonist was impressed with what he saw. Chrome was dressed in casual clothes and asked what he was staring at so much. But our boy's processor was overloaded and he remained silent, until he decided to say that that girl looks very pretty dressed that way. Chrome was visibly embarrassed to receive that compliment, especially since our protagonist was too direct, saying that those dark and gloomy clothes don't really suit her. Telling him to shut up, she ordered him to follow her. Some people are taking pictures with the heroes. Our protagonist recognized one of those heroines who seemed to be a newcomer. She is very famous for making videos on the internet where she eats a lot of things. She gained popularity that way. Chrome says that many heroes join the union because they have a business vision and that girl must be there to increase her number of followers. While they were talking, Styleto approached them, very happy that they showed up. Chrome said they only did that because his plan wasn't so bad, gaining popularity within the union to be able to participate in the voting. The attention they can gain there is much more important than experience or skills. Our protagonist said that people might suspect Chrome, since she belongs to the Guardians, and asked what she should do to gain popularity. Styleto said there is always a way to do that. In a meeting for newcomers, a hero is saying that the abilities are based on manifestation, and depending on that, the same ability can be used in different ways. However, some things can go wrong during this process, showing pictures to the newcomers of what can happen. The user can completely lose control of their powers, becoming uncontrollable. People in that condition, besides losing their appearance, lose their intelligence, gaining a huge amount of power. These are dangers that heroes need to face regularly. If that interested the newcomers, there are specific trainings available in that place. Some do not want to deal with something so dangerous. It seems like a passage to an early death. The teacher noticed that the young people of this generation are no longer interested in this type of work, especially in the union faction, so he would move on to the next topic. That was when someone decided to raise their hand. Our protagonist was the one who did this and asked if it was okay for his group to participate in this. The teacher was truly surprised. Other heroes are saying that he has gone crazy and that he probably hasn't even talked to his group about it. But Styleto assured him that everything would be fine. It's just difficult if you were a very new recruit, but for someone with a sense of justice, it will be easy. Our boy looked out the window, deep in thought. Chrome and he are now in another place. That room was where Justice trained regularly. Pace also uses this space for the same purpose. She just wants to know why our protagonist asked her to prepare that room, and he said he noticed this in the difference in strength. When he defeated Khazar, he just used his power without thinking exactly about how to use it. And he believes he would have lost the fight against Triumph if it had lasted longer. Styleto was right about that. He has only been thinking about doing the minimum, about making money. So our protagonist began to gradually change his hand. Noticing that process, he remembered his 18th birthday. His younger sister was very excited about it. He and his family were celebrating on that occasion. Jungmo told his sister that many birthdays await them in the future. Showing a picture of a hero, he remembered that his sister wanted to meet him, and the girl stated that he is really cool. Then he asked her to pay attention to that. Our boy began to change his appearance in front of her. The child was immediately impressed by what she was seeing. That really is the hero she wanted to meet. Our boy said he had been practicing a lot just for that day. His sister started saying that he is the best brother in the world. That was when disaster struck. Their parents lost their lives in an instant. Our boy looked back, not understanding what was happening. A monster had appeared behind him. It was looking for the hero whose appearance our protagonist copied. Now that a villain appeared there, Jungmo became deeply frightened. His sister said she was scared, and he realized he needed to muster courage or his sister would end up dying. He charged at the villain, ready to strike him, but he was pushed aside as if he were an ant, crashing violently against a wall. The force of the impact was so great that he began to revert his transformation. Badly hurt, he urged his sister to flee from that place. But the villain managed to grab her with his hands and was about to swallow the girl like a candy. That is the trauma he carries. After channeling power into his hand, Jungmo struck the wall, causing a massive wave of destruction. The impact truly advanced in a devastating manner. Chrome could not hide that she was impressed by what her eyes were seeing. Our protagonist said it was time for him to take his role a bit more seriously. Inside a room with several screens, a young man seems to be working. And with the data he found it unexpected even for the Union. It was at that moment that his phone began to ring, and the young man answered the call. He said he already knows that this person is heading there. As he walks through this room, his feet leave a slimy trail. He moves away from the computer, saying he was getting very bored being there. So this was perfect. The boy went to a door. Some sounds could be heard through it, and he began to turn that handle with his hands, revealing that the doors seemed to have reinforced security. Now he can access what was inside. At first, it seems to be a completely normal room, and the boy said that the time had finally come, because those creatures were starting to get very hungry. Our protagonist is now walking through the city in the company of his new companion. Chrome asked if our boy hadn't overdone it the day before. Turning her attention to Styleto, she said that users who lose control seem very dangerous, and she would like to know if everything will be okay. But for Styleto, in the company of Justice and Chrome, there's nothing to fear. It is because of Chrome's presence that no veteran was sent with them, a sign that this task is not so dangerous. She asked if the groups are not made up of a minimum of 4 people and wanted to know who the last member of that team is. That was when a feminine hand touched our protagonist on the back, and she introduced herself to them quite happily. This is that girl who is famous on the internet for eating things, and she wished she could get along very well with our boy. Chrome was very upset with Stiletto, who chose a streamer to join them, and he had already told her that in the Union faction, being popular is important. Having someone like No.1 on their side will be the perfect situation, especially considering that they want to keep their identities a secret. The girl was curious, asking why they would hide their identities. The one who was worried about this was our protagonist, thinking that the newcomer might discover everything. But she's a normal person and wouldn't suspect others without reason. She thought they were also streamers and said that at first it is very difficult to reveal one's face. Junmo realized that there was nothing to worry about there, and Stiletto suggested that they split up since that area is very large. Our boy thought he would go with Chrome, but Stiletto made it clear that this would not happen, since our protagonist will be tasked with staying by the newcomer's side. Not liking that, Stiletto asked if our boy still remembers the instructor's words about the manifestation of power, stating that Junmo still doesn't know the difference between a released power and a contained power, and the difference between them is similar to night and day. No.1 is someone who'd help him with that. Our protagonist didn't even consider this possibility, and Stiletto assured him that he has much more to learn from this newcomer than in Chrome's company. But looking at her, our boy is genuinely in doubt. Stiletto said that if that wasn't enough, he should realize that it would be safer if Chrome were responsible for monitoring him if he didn't trust him enough. Chrome immediately agreed with this point, saying that they divided the groups this way. As he moved away from our protagonist, Stiletto said he should be called if anything happened, leaving Junwo and the newcomer behind. Even so, they continued patrolling the city. Junwo didn't expect to do this alongside a famous streamer, one of the last things he thought would happen in his life. He realized that she is very different in person. He thought she used filters to change her image, but it would be too rude of him to keep staring. That's when he realized he still didn't know what her ability was. No.1 had approached our boy, asking what Stiletto meant by monitoring. Junwo realized they had pushed their luck a bit and told her that Stiletto was talking about evaluation, about how they would all behave in that task. She seemed to understand, and our boy was surprised by how easily that woman accepted things. Seizing the opportunity, he asked what her ability was. She says she can eat anything. She wants to become stronger. Junwo didn't even know exactly how this ability applies and asked why she decided to become a heroine. She said her reasons are simple. She wants to keep eating delicious things and become an even more famous streamer. Junwo was more categorical, asking if there was a reason she received her powers or something like that. No.1 said no and asked if one needs a reason for something like that. Junwo didn't know how this girl could help him manifest his power, believing that Stiletto had just hit him with various fallacies. No.1 told him to think about what he always wanted to do, and it doesn't have to be a big reason or something special. That really left our protagonist thoughtful. That girl may seem simple, but she has a much clearer reason for using her powers than Junwo has for using his. Before turning a corner, she asked our protagonist to wait a bit. There seemed to be something suspicious there. And indeed, there was a person with superpowers. Junwo began to wonder if that was their target, deciding to stay quiet to be sure. But No.1 wouldn't stop making noise while chewing on those sweets. Junwo started to get very worried, as it seemed she had no idea what was happening in that situation. So he asked her to take a break from that. Because they were arguing, the villain noticed that something was happening there. He immediately began to move toward the sound. Manifesting her power, No.1 said she needed to eat. And now that she had become stronger, she would punish that villain appropriately. She managed to advance on him, hitting his face with a kick. The impact was truly devastating. The body of that villain was thrown far away, destroying a wall. No.1 believes that was enough to resolve the battle. Meanwhile, Junwo seems to have understood how her powers work. Perhaps strength is amplified through calorie consumption. Indeed, her power works the way I explained. And the girl is saying that exercising is something invigorating, but after seeing that, Junwo wouldn't call it exercise, as she only delivered a kick. But as the girl was getting thinner, he realized it made sense. After recovering from the impact, the creature became aggressive again, and managed to surprise the girl with a punch. Junwo was very worried about her because he didn't see that coming, until he realized there was no reason to be concerned. No.1 managed to perfectly defend against that attack, saying that she must have burned approximately 300 calories, and that now she could eat another chocolate bar. It was her turn to take the offensive position again, successfully getting the creature's belly once more. Unlike her, the monster seemed unable to withstand its enemy's attacks. Now that it received the second blow, the expression of pain on its face is quite noticeable. Knowing it couldn't win against those people, the irrational monster took the most rational action, fleeing immediately. The girl didn't want it to leave like that, while Junwo didn't imagine the creature could move after being hit. No.1 said she would follow it, telling our boy to call the other two. Affirming to her that he would do as suggested, he was left alone on that street. With the feeling that he had just witnessed something incredible, he went to grab his cell phone, not realizing that a strange slime was approaching from behind him. Before he could grab the device, that slime knocked it from his hand and began to change shape before his eyes. until it took the form of a person saying that our boy wouldn't call for his friends, destroying the cell phone immediately. Junwo was upset with Stellito, who had mentioned there was another target, and looking at that young man, he realized he didn't seem to be an out-of-control user. Regardless of what was happening, his priority was to contact the others, so he asked for his cell phone back. Trying to attack that boy, his strike passed through the slime. Seeing that the substance spread across the ground, Junwo began to think that his strike was ineffective, until he felt something burning in his ribs. Without realizing it, he had just been stabbed. That mysterious young man had spoken once before. He wouldn't let our protagonist contact his friends. Junwo was quite irritated by what had just happened, striking the young man's body with the back of his hand. But he noticed something different. That sensation disappeared, and the young man was shaking his jaw, checking if everything was in place. Our protagonist was very cautious in front of that stranger. When he spoke again, the young man revealed himself to be quite odd, lamenting that the pretty girl had left. Junwo asked if he had anything to do with that out-of-control user, and the strange young man said he might. It would be easier to say that he taught that person to express their deepest desires. Not everyone can manifest their powers. All he did was give a little encouragement to that man. Only then would he be able to reach his full potential. Gathering his energy at the spot where he was injured, Junwo realized he was facing the one responsible for creating that monster. That was enough. He wouldn't need to go easy on this person. And the boy who could turn into slime liked the challenge, being the first to advance against our protagonist. But the traumatic blows executed by Junwo were unable to do anything. This time he noticed that his entire arm was dirty with it. Trying to understand what that substance was, he realized it looked a lot like mud. Our protagonist was praised in the last chapter by Stellito, who said he was smart, but this time, he seemed focused on distracting himself in this fight, turning his back to the enemy, who started spitting that disgusting stuff at him. At least Junwo managed to escape, but he was still with his arm all dirty from it, until he began to feel nauseated. The problem was that he couldn't free himself from it, and the strange boy said he would never remove it alone. His mud is stronger than rubber once it adheres. Maybe if he struggles enough, he could achieve something, but the odd one doubted that would happen. Throwing more mud at him, he revealed that he wouldn't allow something like that to be possible. Now our protagonist's body was getting dirtier and dirtier. The more mud appeared, the less he was able to move. His movements were becoming increasingly limited. At this rate, he would be finished soon. He realized that his only chance of victory was to reduce the distance. Then he started to run towards that guy. Seeing that our protagonist was trying to close the distance, he imagined that his reach must be very short. There was just one problem with that. He was sure that our protagonist wouldn't be able to move with all that mud stuck to his body. Junwo showed him that he had a few tricks up his sleeve, concentrating his power in one of his hands. It was about to hit the face of that cursed citizen. Junwo was now sure he had caught him off guard. The force of the blow went through that guy's body. And seeing what happened, our protagonist began to feel a bit scared. And the strange guy said that blow hurt quite a bit. It was at that moment that Junwo realized he couldn't pull his arm away from that man's body. While trying to struggle, he noticed a hand approaching his face. He was hit squarely with no chance to block it. Against all odds, that blow was stronger than he had expected. Our protagonist began to be beaten up while being taunted by the strange guy, who was asking where his advantage was after closing the distance. While being overwhelmed by those blows, Junwo tried to think of something. He decided he would use more power this time, and with his hand completely enveloped in his blue energy, he asked if the strange guy would be able to block that. He revealed a rather confident smile. Another out-of-control user appeared on that street. The situation was becoming increasingly complicated for Junwo. He needed to contain all the force he had gathered for that blow. This ended up giving the out-of-control user a chance to hit him, but our boy managed to block the blow somehow. Even so, he ended up being hit, thrown several meters away. He tried to get up slowly, his body still coated in that strange mud. That enemy in front of him seemed human, and this was leaving our protagonist very confused. What he knew so far was that this person had become that way because of the actions of that strange guy. The problem he had to solve had grown larger. Approaching our protagonist, the strange guy said he already had many test subjects like him, and he wasn't even feeling what he would like to add him to his collection. Knowing that there were more people in this situation left Junwo worried. At the same time the strange guy confirmed this, another creature appeared behind him. Junwo began to feel scared by what he was seeing. Now he was surrounded by those out-of-control users. It wasn't just a few creatures. That strange guy was cultivating several of them. Ignoring our protagonist, he said he was going after that pretty girl. Junwo became worried about what could happen and asked that man to wait a bit. But he seemed to have given an order to all those creatures. They would take care of our boy. A kind of collar was around the neck of each of them. Right after that order, a large surge of electricity passed through their bodies. Junwo, watching all that, became increasingly surprised. But he was soon surprised by one of the creatures, which was obeying the orders of that strange guy. Junwo managed to block that attack with his hands, but another monster was already behind him. He barely managed to dodge. The ground was destroyed by that devastating blow. There were more enemies than he had expected, and what truly worried him was that No.1 was in the same situation as him. Two other creatures tried to attack him simultaneously. All our protagonist could do now was block those attacks. But since he was at a numerical disadvantage, he wasn't able to get ahead of all of them, until he was finally being completely subdued by the creatures. One of them started to get excited, hitting harder. But Junwo decided he had taken enough punishment, grabbing the hand of that monster. Finally, he managed to move. As he slowly got up from the ground, it was possible to see the mud peeling off his body. Thanks to that beating session, the mud that had been stuck to his body finally let go. While gathering strength to retaliate against those blows, Junwo said he needed to find his companion. The first of the creatures to be hit would certainly need to go to the dentist soon. Junwo would not allow anything to stand in his way. This time, he was managing to react to all those creatures. Once again, one of those out-of-control ones tried to hit our boy in the back, and all he managed to do while advancing towards the protagonist was to have his nose smashed by an elbow. Junwo was managing to use his reflexes to his advantage, now completely ready to react to the charge of the other two. However, their combined attack proved effective, throwing our boy far away. Even though he was hit, Junwo remained in the fight. This time, he decided to channel his strength to the tips of his toes, shooting in their direction like a lightning bolt, hitting the face of the one who already needed orthodontic work with a flying knee. Right after striking the blue creature's face, he used his body to gain momentum, launching himself towards the other, whose face was smashed into the concrete. Even so, the numerical advantage is proving difficult to overcome, as the third monster managed to hit Junwo in his blind spot. The longer the fight drags on, the more out of breath Junwo becomes. It was then that he realized that this number of enemies might be too much for his current circumstances. Still trying to catch his breath, he was surprised by the hairy monster's ability to stretch its tongue several meters. Junwo didn't dodge it out of fear, but rather pure disgust. Only then did he realize that a giant blue hand was coming in his direction. The impact happened violently. Junwo managed to defend against it, but the force of the blow threw him towards the nearest wall, causing significant damage. Junwo realizes he is holding back because those creatures were once people, but if he continues this way, that fight will never end. And the monsters are very dedicated to that task. It was then that the blue-skinned one said something to him. The creature was hungry. A little distance away, Nam finally managed to defeat the green-skinned creature. She started to celebrate having completed another task, thinking she should have filmed that action. The problem is that she doesn't know if it would be interesting for a newbie to film their first task, as her new companions are reluctant to reveal their identities. It was only then that she realized what was happening. She started to miss her new companions, who were significantly delayed. It was at that moment that the strange boy appeared near her, praising the work she had done. He couldn't believe she managed to take down that monster completely on her own. Nam asked who he was, and the strange boy said he was also one of the new heroes who had recently joined the same faction. He said his group was also after that guy, but it seems the girls solved the problem for them, and she said it was nothing special. Then she asked if the boy had encountered a man with black hair while coming over. The strange boy commented that he heard him say he would call the rest of his team. While trying to deceive the girl, he looked back once more, seeing the defeated creature. He wasn't expecting that to happen, and the most obvious explanation to him is that the monster is weaker than he expected. But there's another viable possibility as well, that the girl is much stronger than she appears. Now that they were talking, she decided to confirm if they were from the same faction. The question left the boy confused, but the girl is sure that by his clothes he doesn't belong to the Guardians or the Ubermensch. And since he isn't interested in ending the life of that guitar, he also doesn't belong to El Condor. He said he belongs to the Union too, and that she probably doesn't remember him. But the girl didn't believe that, because she can remember everyone who belongs to the Union, saying that a basic skill for someone who does live streams like her is to remember people's faces and names. The instructor had also said on the first day that all the recruits from that faction were there, and she doesn't remember seeing him on that occasion. That's why she can't help but think he is very suspicious. A boy also realized he wouldn't be able to stall the girl for much longer, and since she is his type, he is very eager to play a little more, not to mention that she has an interesting ability. She would be a great addition to his personal collection. Before he could surprise her, Nam managed to attack him first. Showing that her power can be devastating, she made a large hole in the body of that strange one, saying that touching someone without consent is a big mistake. The strange boy looked down to try to understand the damage he had suffered, seeing pieces of his hand scattered on the ground. Naim said the guy is starting to make her feel uncomfortable. At first, she thought about just letting him go, but she decided she wouldn't store those calories in her body. Meanwhile, our protagonist is having to deal with those out-of-control monsters. Hitting the blue-skinned creature's mouth once again, it seems he has a personal mission to destroy all the teeth in that mouth. Striking the monster's face, he didn't notice that another one was approaching. After being grabbed by the waist, he realized it was the same one that always manages to surprise him. The villain managed to break through the wall like a locomotive. Due to the impact, he ended up releasing the body of our protagonist, who was already prepared to continue the fight. Noticing that all those monsters were heading in his direction. While defending himself from the blows, he tried to talk to them, saying they were being controlled by the mud boy. But all those monsters did was keep attacking. One of them said he was very hungry. Junwo realized that they seemed to have no signs of intelligence. It was as if they were zombies. Distracted by his thoughts, he was immobilized by one of them, who held him by the arms. This gave the opportunity for other monsters to start hitting him. However, our protagonist was already tired of taking hits and decided to treat those enemies as monsters with no humanity whatsoever. A sudden change in his behavior caused great fear in the blue-skinned monster. Our protagonist was emanating the fullness of the power he possessed. The monster that had tried to grab him from behind was also scared. Junwo said he was already eager to test that in a real fight and hesitated to put it into practice in front of the mud boy. But now he had the perfect opportunity as there was no need to hold back anymore. As his body exuded an intense blue energy, the monsters became hesitant to attack, until one of them managed to gather enough courage to do so. This time our protagonist showed that he was much more powerful, catching that punch with the palm of his hand. That was enough to instill great fear in the creature. Our protagonist is aware that those enemies are very strong, and while crushing the monster's hand, he said he was much more than they were. Junwo would never lose to them in a contest of brute strength. The creature immediately felt its body being accelerated. This was caused by our protagonist, who threw it far away. The force of the impact caused the monster's body to destroy everything around it, also taking another creature with it. With a single movement, Junwo took two of them out of combat, realizing that his training was paying off. But now he decided to analyze that enemy better. Earlier, he asked Chrome if those people who lose control can return to being human, because that is what they were in the first place, so there should be a solution. Chrome said they are just monsters. Stylido confirmed that there has yet to be a case of those monsters returning to become human. They are merely creatures that kill and destroy. They are practically villains with little intelligence. He suggested that our boys should not hesitate to end their lives, as the monsters would definitely show no mercy. Junwo felt empathy for the creatures that ended up that way and were still being controlled by that bastard. He warned them that he would do his best to make their deaths painless. Naeum, on the other hand, was fighting the weird guy. She asked once again if he had seen her companion, and if he had done anything to him. The weird guy tried to act mysterious, saying that her friend must have already become monster food. He also said that the girl's ability is unique and that he wanted to add her to his personal collection, guaranteeing that if she followed him willingly, he would also promise that she wouldn't get hurt too much. Naeum only felt her disgust for him grow, wishing it were possible to banish a person in real life. That way she wouldn't have to listen to the voice of that disgusting man. The mud boy realized that she wouldn't come willingly, so he began to prepare for a fight. Taking on a complete mud form, he confirmed that tormenting her would be much more fun. Naeum managed to use her power to destroy the mud, but the weird boy was clever, managing to dodge her trajectory. Moving quickly, the weird boy managed to execute several attacks while taunting his enemy. After defending herself for a bit, Naeum seemed to have understood something. Then she used her strength to jump several meters into the air. The weird guy said that if she gained distance, it wouldn't help her in the fight. Doing to her what he did to our protagonist, he shot mud from his mouth at her. And now that she was distant from him, Naeum was able to turn her attention to a chocolate bar she had in her hands, immediately consuming the sweet. Those calories were enough for her to create a large ball of energy, which was thrown towards that villain as if it were a massive power. And the mud boy realized that it could be a bit dangerous. As soon as the energy ball touched the ground, a huge explosion occurred in that place. The villain barely managed to escape, but he was so frightened that the trail he left behind was definitely not just mud. The heroine's firepower is no joke. And you believe she must be getting exhausted as she used a lot of energy at the corner. It's impossible for her to maintain this pace. Naeum in turn started eating more chocolate bars while unleashing other powers towards the villain, who finally realized what was coming in his direction. Worried about his own physical integrity, he began to think about how many chocolate bars she must have in her pockets. If it's only a few, he could end up dead at this rate. Realizing they needed to change their strategy if they wanted to get out alive. Launching a frontal attack, the villain was using all of his abilities against her. Naeum was preparing another power with her hand, saying their frontal attack wouldn't work. That's when she began to feel she was losing her balance and had to abort her attack. Looking at the ground, she realized she was completely surrounded by mud, and the villain started to smile. That ability was his manifested power, the mud storm. Naeum was trapped inside a tornado that seemed to be made of that disgusting mud. She also felt that the substance was sticking to her body, making her feel heavy. Gathering energy in her hands again, she did that in the hope of getting out of that place. But her hand was immediately intercepted by the mud. The villain wasn't going to allow her to try anything. Even so, Naeum was struggling to manifest a bit of her power, and outside, that mud storm continued to grow. When it reached its peak, the villain began to walk towards a large block of mud. Inside it was the imprisoned body of the heroine. And he said that the longer a battle lasts, the more mud he can produce, and that is a natural advantage as he can trap his enemies. Showing that it is truly disgusting, he said that the girl looked beautiful in that situation, which makes him even more eager to add her to his collection. Only he didn't realize that the real danger was still approaching. Our protagonist arrived just in time, managing to strike that bastard's body with great force. The villain was thrown far away and still couldn't understand what happened. Junwo strongly recommended that he not touch that girl, because he is disgusted by that filthy, depraved man. As soon as he recovered from the impact, the villain said he didn't expect to see that guy again. saying he should have run away, and he shouldn't have gone after him considering he lost the first fight. Junwo began to channel a large amount of energy in his hands, saying that on the way there, he managed to think of a strategy to beat that guy. In the Guardians building, Haste seemed to have just finished training. She knows that our protagonist's team infiltrated the Yumian and began to wonder if they were okay. That's when she saw a man working in that hallway. Haste asked if something was wrong, and that robot or man said she wouldn't be able to use the training room now, saying that probably Justice used that place and the room is a complete mess. Very irritated by hearing this, she continued walking towards the room anyway. She was already upset with Junwo's actions and was wondering what he might have done to that room. But as soon as she entered, she was immediately surprised. There was destruction in every corner. Haste was very curious to know what our protagonist did in that place, and definitely, he will show it in this battle with the villain. Believing that our protagonist was just throwing empty words, the strange villain began to smile and said he should have heeded his warning, making it clear that those powers wouldn't work on him. But our protagonist is eager to find out if that's true, saying that very soon they will know the true answer. The villain was preparing to spit a large amount of mud, doing so immediately, spitting the mud in Junwo's direction. Our hero acted quickly, grabbing part of the asphalt from that place with his hand, and he threw the debris towards the mud that was hurled. The villain recognized that this approach is much more efficient than using empty hands. Transforming his body completely into a mass of mud, he advanced towards Junwo. Managing to grab the boy's body, he mockingly asked how he would be able to block that, doing to him the same thing he had done to Naim, attacking from all sides. Junwo was covered in mud, but unlike the first time, he remained quite focused. The villain began to smile at this, imagining that the hero had prepared a plan, because standing still like a fool in front of him doesn't seem like an efficient plan. And the villain seems interested in knowing how this will change the course of the battle, and at that moment, Junwo began to clench his fists tightly. Concentrating more and more energy in his body, he said he would soon show. As if he were a Super Saiyan, he simply exploded that mud using the aura that enveloped his body, to the villain's surprise. After witnessing that from a front row seat, he couldn't believe his own eyes. Junwo was beginning to change shape, resembling Justice. On the other side of the street, the shops remained intact. In the next second, one of the stores had its facade blown apart. That was caused by the villain's body, which was violently thrown towards that building. He tried to place himself on the ground, realizing that the situation had now completely changed. The hero he was battling had become much more powerful. The villain attempted to spit mud at him once again. Junwo was already prepared to receive that attack, and using a powerful movement with his arm, he deflected the mud that was about to hit him. It was then that the villain realized that the mud was not sticking to his enemy's body. He had also been able to do the same thing moments before, which led the villain to think that the boy might be hiding his true power. And this time, he needed to think quickly, as Junwo was approaching him with full force. The villain's hope was that he believed everything our protagonist had was brute strength, so that wouldn't work. But as soon as he was hit by that blow, his entire body disintegrated. While being thrown through the air, the villain was wondering what that was, because the blow was completely devastating. The shockwave left a trail of destruction on the asphalt. The mud that was scattered by the impact began to gather on the ground. It was the villain trying to regain his form. Still not understanding all that power, he noticed another hand coming in his direction. Junwo hit him again, destroying the villain's body once more. Our boy realized that this enemy had a great regenerative capacity, so he became interested to see who was superior, him and his ability to destroy, or the mud boy and his ability to reassemble. The villain realized that the pieces of his body were flying far away beyond his ability to control them. He would lose the battle at this rate. His only way out was to end it immediately, and he decided to use his most powerful ability, enveloping our protagonist with a mud storm, believing that he would not be able to overcome that. Junwo was impressed that that enemy could control the mud in such a way. The villain said that the hero was a great fool for relying only on the brute strength he had. As a result of his actions, he promised that he would suffocate through the mud, causing the tornado to become increasingly intense. All our protagonist did inside was catch his breath, using an even greater amount of Justice's power, striking the ground with all his strength that caused a massive shockwave, capable of completely destroying the tornado. The villain's ability was undone, and when the dust settled, it was possible to see a large crater on that avenue. The pieces of the strange boy were scattered throughout the city. Now completely terrified, he couldn't believe that this hero was a novice, as he had destroyed his ability just with the shockwave in the air. As soon as he thought about fleeing, his path was blocked by Junwo. He was already asking where the strange one thought he was going. Seeing that his path was blocked, the mud villain began to involuntarily produce mud from his pants. Trying to use his deception, he started to smile at our hero, claiming that he recognized his defeat since he was unable to defeat that hero. However, he believed that he also could not be defeated, since all Junwo did was throw the mud away. That was not enough to hurt him. With a broad smile on his face, Junwo seemed to be waiting for a phrase like that. Every time he transformed into Justice, he was unable to use the fullness of those powers. Until now, he was not able to do that, however. If it were for a short period of time, he could. A martial artist he saw on the internet once said that it is not necessary to use all the strength constantly. You just need to focus and release the strength on the target when necessary. almost as if it were an explosion, and this time our protagonist's blow was visibly lethal. The mud villain realized what was happening. Junwo managed to hit him with his power fully unleashed. That blow was the magnum. This time the pieces of mud were reduced to dust. Junwo knows he couldn't just keep sending the chunks of mud away. But with the strength he just used, it seems his strategy really worked. After a long sequence of action, Styleto and Crone follow like two useless individuals who haven't done anything so far. Then he said he had something to ask. He wanted to know if she wasn't too close to observe him, when Crone said she still didn't trust him. He wants to know why he infiltrated the Union. If his goal is to kill villains, he didn't need to go that far for that. And the truth is he also agrees with that statement. But you made it clear that they still don't trust each other enough to get into that conversation. It was at that moment that Crone noticed something strange, and she asked Styleto to wait a little too. She started pointing to a building next to them. Styleto asked what she had noticed, and the heroine said that building is the only one still with electricity. She could see a small light source through the window. Styleto agreed they should analyze that evidence, but he really wanted to know how she was able to see that. As they approached the building's door, they saw it was closed. Breaking it down wasn't a difficult task for him. Finally, the duo had access to the inside. The first room resembled a work office with some computers and various files. Crone realized this is a completely ordinary environment, and they might have forgotten to turn off the power. Styleto immediately went to the nearest switch. After interacting with it, he saw that the light in that room remained on. He concluded that there must be a generator in that building supplying the power. After hearing that, Crone began to grow increasingly suspicious of the place. Then she started walking toward a door. It was made of iron and very thick. To get through it, it was easier to cut the walls around it, which she did using her shadow tentacles. And right after that, she was immediately shocked by what her eyes were seeing. Styleto approached to see as well, sharing the same reaction. It looked like a secret laboratory. They had definitely captured a very big fish. There were several tubes in that place, like aquariums, and inside each of them were monsters. It resembled a poorly maintained hospital room. He saw blood and surgical instruments everywhere. The more Crone observed that place, the more frightened she became. Imagining what could be a research facility, Styleto also agreed with her on that. It was then that he noticed some documents scattered on the table, realizing that place was an enemy of ethics. That facility was conducting biological research. Crone began to wonder who would be crazy enough to do something like that. So she decided to approach a computer that was on. She immediately started searching for information. To access the system, a password was required. Maybe she couldn't do that now. It would be necessary to take the computer to the atrium to gather information. To her surprise, Styleto began typing on the keyboard, and without much difficulty, he managed to bypass that security. Crone asked how he knew the access password. Styleto said there were 53 people in that room, and most of them are dead. They all appeared to be unskilled users but had some potential. This operation is much bigger than he was imagining. But Crone thrust one of her shadow tentacles in front of him. Making it clear that she wanted an answer to her question, Styleto should explain how he knew the password. In the same city, Junwo had defeated his enemy. And by the way he was able to do that, he was impressed with his power. Coming to the conclusion that he might have exaggerated a bit, perhaps this was caused by the fact that he was dealing with a very troublesome enemy. It was then that he realized he had completely forgotten about Naim, who must still be trapped in that mud. Getting closer to the girl, he noticed she was fine. It even looked like she was undergoing some mud therapy. Remembering what he had done earlier, he realized there were more out-of-control creatures than he was expecting. Things were getting quite complicated. Hearing a crackle, he looked back and saw a communication device. It seemed to be a radio. The mud boy must have dropped it at some point. On the other side, a voice asked Hedoro what was happening outside. Junwo realized there were more people involved in this situation, and that Hedoro must be the name of the mud guy. Assuming the appearance of his enemy, he said on the radio that he had some problems with rookie heroes. The person on the other side said they had gone through the same thing, warning that a man and a woman somehow entered the laboratory. He said he should use explosives to destroy the evidence and those intruders. Junwo knows they are talking about his companions. He said he can't blow up the laboratory now because his hands are tied. It was then that the person on the other side questioned Hedoro's identity. Our protagonist tried to stay in character, because there are many involved in that situation, and he soon realized that his companions might be in great danger. Crone is still trying to extract information from Styleto, and if he didn't explain now, things could get violent. It seems he had noticed something, immediately getting ready to attack. Styleto did this to block an attack that was coming their way. Crone was unable to perceive what was happening, but there was another person with them in that place. Styleto noticed that his bone gauntlet was disappearing. That had never happened before, and he began to wonder what could have hit him. A mysterious hand began to touch the walls of the laboratory. Wherever it passed, the matter was completely destroyed. Gradually, the place began to become completely destabilized, and the entire building started to collapse. Pieces of it were falling everywhere. Crone realized that the whole place would fall in a few moments. Several rocks were already heading towards the duo. Crone felt a strong impact on one of his arms. Styleto had to kick her hard to prevent her from being hit by the falling debris. The heroine was worried about her companion and ran towards him, but her path was blocked by the falling concrete. Under the rubble, she also managed to see a large pool of blood. This scene made her desperate. It was then that mysterious man made his entrance into the place, and it seems he knows Chrome, saying that this is very strange as he heard that the two were sent by the Union faction. Chrome is quite dark now, manifesting her power ready to fight. Her shadows were immediately sent in the direction of that man, saying she is very interested to know who those people are that passed that information to him. The mysterious man used his ability through his feet, completely nullifying the heroine's shadows. He told her that there is no purpose in revealing that information, since very soon she will cease to live. Chrome realized that this enemy is unconventional. Now we have been transported to a flashback. A girl is counting a large amount of money. This happened 10 years ago, and to our surprise, this is Chrome. After counting the money, she closed the envelope, discreetly storing that amount inside a book, which is kept on her shelf. It was then that her mother entered the room calling for her daughter, and Chrome was startled. The woman seemed to have very tired eyes and asked if the girl wasn't going to school. Chrome was very startled by her mother's appearance, asking what happened to her since she had a swollen eye. The girl asked if it was that jerk again. Her mother said that everything is fine, and there is something more important to say. She apologized to her daughter. Chrome is unable to respond. She just accepts the words with sadness, while thinking that her mother didn't need to apologize for that. Then the girl left home to go to school, thinking that her mother is too good for her own good. Classes were coming to an end, and she seems to be meeting with the educational counselor. He is asking if she agrees with this decision, as the girl is an excellent student and could enter the best universities. But she made it clear that she will start working as soon as she leaves school. Once her classes were over, she returned home, and ended up being surprised by a classmate who called Crone No.1 girl and learned that she had been to the principal's office once again. She wanted to know when she would start getting attention from the teachers too. Chrome said that for that she needs to study first. While they were walking, Chrome's friend began to complain about the excessive heat of that season and was waiting for summer vacation. She asked what our girl does during the holidays, as she is forced to go camping with her father, which she finds very boring. Chrome said her family just stays home, and her friend felt envious of that, as she wanted to do the same. Soon after that, the two said their goodbyes. Chrome was already running late for her next appointment. She had a part-time job. She did all this to stay away from that man. At the end of her shift, she received her payment for that day. On her way home, she began to count that money. But this time she was very happy, counting on the amount she had saved at home. She would be able to rent a room somewhere. And this time she could take her mother too, to a peaceful place. The two would be much happier alone. Chrome finally announced that she had arrived home, and found that violent man. Everything was a mess. She asked what happened, and the violent man said that the woman had left while he was there, and he started asking where she had gotten so much money. That was when the girl realized what might have happened. The one who seems to be her father remained irritated. Chrome went straight to the book where she was keeping the money, realizing that everything she had saved had disappeared. But then again, in the 21st century, one can keep money in the bank. One can buy cryptocurrency, but she preferred to keep it in an envelope inside a book. She began to think that her mother might have been responsible for this. While she was thinking, she was surprised by a kick from that violent man. To him, she was insignificant. We shouldn't ignore him while he was talking. Kicking the girl's back, he said that they had planned this together. Chrome thought she would never be able to escape that situation. All she wanted was to get out of that place. Completely desperate, her eyes began to shine with a different light. Shadows began to emerge from her body, which frightened that violent man. Chrome still couldn't say what had happened. Maybe that was her power, she just didn't know why it had awakened now. Without realizing it, the color of her hair was also transforming along with the color of her nails. And she quickly understood that, because it was exactly what she needed. The man who had been very violent was now as tame as a kitten. He was the one responsible for making Chrome's life a true torment, and she was determined to make him pay for what he did to her life, sending her shadows in his direction to end that man's cruelty. The mysterious man said that Chrome is very well known among the Guardians. It's no wonder she is the right hand of justice, which makes him wonder why she had allowed herself to be captured by Khazar. To him, she must be planning something. Chrome simply ignored that comment, saying that she was the one responsible for asking questions in that place. Then she sent her shadows in his direction once again. The man didn't seem surprised by her offensive. He just extended his hand to a panel that was nearby. Immediately, something began to break the glass from the inside. That reaction caused more debris to fall, blocking the heroine's attack. After seeing that ability once again, Chrome thought that man could break everything he touched. So she needed to be very cautious during this fight. She couldn't allow him to get close in any way. She started to overwhelm him with various attacks, but the mysterious man managed to defend against all of them. One of those shadows passed very close to his face, and it was enough for him to touch it with the tip of one of his hands. His power began to spread through the shadows, going directly to Chrome. Very scared, she realized that she could be reached by that ability even if she was distant, and now part of that power had reached her arm. Destruction was already underway, but very conveniently, only her clothes began to be destroyed. However, that attack seemed to have weakened her. The man decided to approach, saying that she definitely didn't expect this. Chrome realized that that villain was much more dangerous than she thought. With his hand open, the mysterious man was ready to end her journey in this land. Just a few centimeters away from holding her face with his hands. That was when both heard a loud noise in that room. Our dear protagonist arrived to save the day, managing to strike that strange man. Even though he had been thrown far away, he didn't seem to have sustained significant damage. Junwo seemed to be very outraged by what he had seen, strongly recommending to that strange man not to come near Chrome again. Now that he had gained some distance, Junwo analyzed the situation, noticing that something strange was happening with his hand. It was as if his hand was being destroyed or falling apart. The mysterious man told this rookie that he still hadn't understood the situation. Chrome was no challenge for him, a rookie wouldn't be either. He should know which battles he could win, but our protagonist's hand was already almost hitting that face. After being hit once again, the mysterious man was pushed away, being impressed by what had happened, since that rookie hadn't stopped attacking. A great sequence of punches was unleashed against him. Junwo was quite furious, and this time he managed to hit that man's stomach. Finally, he stopped his sequence of blows, and the mysterious villain leaned his hand against the nearest wall, causing it to start crumbling. This caused a new wave of debris and dust. For a brief moment, Junwo couldn't see very well what was in front of him, and he was unable to notice that a hand was approaching his face. He managed to dodge it by a hair's breadth, but one of his hands was already compromised. Only then did he realize that part of that ability had extended to his body. While distracted by the pain he felt, he noticed at the last moment that another hand was approaching his throat, but he managed to pull away from it, avoiding being grabbed by the mysterious villain. As he was now further away, the villain used his ability on the floor of that building, causing it to start disintegrating, which threw our protagonist off balance. This gave the villain an opportunity. He managed to get closer, striking our boy in the abdomen. Junwo finally realized that his enemy is very strong. He was on a completely different level from the people he had faced so far. Even so, Junwo was not going to give up. He managed to attack that man once more, but the strength he was using seemed insufficient to cause any damage. Junwo understood that he could not continue striking his enemy without using all his strength. Since he keeps blocking the attacks or dodging them, none of his blows so far had been effective. All he managed to do was get countered effectively. Junwo felt that he only had one solution left. He began to charge furiously at his enemy. The villain realized that this was yet another attack easy to predict. All the power of that hero was being concentrated in his fist. It was at that moment that Junwo began to unleash all his power, and he used against that villain the ability he had perfected on the mud boy. This time, the strange man felt that it was quite different. In that power, he was able to injure a bit of his arm, but he had no time to be distracted. Junwo was still very furious with him, and the mysterious villain was impressed by this ability, being hit in the arm once again. When he began to analyze the damage, he realized that the bones in his arm had turned into a big puzzle. It was at that moment that he grabbed the radio to ask something to Hedoro. He wanted to know if he had managed to collect all the samples. The mud boy managed to respond to him, saying that somehow he managed to do it, but it was harder than he imagined. Receiving that answer, a mysterious man said he was going to leave. Junwo charged at him once more, saying he wouldn't allow that. But he ended up ignoring the environment around him, stepping exactly where that man's power was. A large crater opened up in the ground. Junwo could do nothing as he was not capable of flying. In free fall, he noticed that Chrome was also still heading towards the ground. The fight with that mysterious villain was not going to continue. But capturing his facial expression, Junwo realized that they would meet again, and our boy intensely wished to continue that. Looking at his companion, he realized that there were more urgent priorities. She was only falling like that because she had lost consciousness. Chrome was dreaming of what happened that day when she attacked her father. She used her tentacles to hurt him, showing him how cool it is to subjugate the weak using the strength one has. While he was begging for mercy, she moved a little closer, saying that she wouldn't do that. Because all of this happening is his fault, he was the one responsible for ruining her life. The coward kept trying to apologize, asking his daughter to forgive him for everything he did. But those false words only made her even more enraged. Because a piece of trash like him does not deserve the blessing of life. It was at that moment that she tried to attack him fairly, but her tentacles were stopped by a massive wall of muscle. The hero of justice had appeared there. He said he understood her anger, but he knew that she also didn't want to end that man's life. He was going to say a few more words of comfort, but Chrome told him to shut up. Believing that he understood absolutely nothing, she just wanted to finish the job. Justice said that death is too comforting an end for people like him. She shouldn't allow a coward to escape his sins so easily. There are other ways to punish that, saying that he could take her to a place where she would be able to use her powers for the greater good. It seems that in this way he managed to get her attention. The dream was over and Chrome began to slowly open her eyes. She noticed that there was someone by her side. At first glance, she thought that person could be Justice. It was then that she realized she was actually talking to Junwo, who looked visibly worried. She never imagined she would confuse these two people one day. Disappointed, she ended up closing her eyes, which left our protagonist even more desperate. Without Junwo knowing, Chrome began to judge herself, thinking she was foolish for confusing the two. Junwo didn't know what had happened to his friend, so he was very worried. He was trying to wake her up. As nothing he had tried so far worked, he began to feel anxious. It was only now that he realized someone was missing, so he started to wonder where Styleto could be. Since he arrived at that building, he hadn't been able to find him. He even thought that he might have escaped, leaving Chrome behind. Even though he was thinking this, it didn't take long for him to find a hand hidden in the rubble. It certainly could only belong to one person. Removing all those stones from in front of him, he tried to tell the young man to hang in there. but it was too heavy. It's possible that his body couldn't take it. Junwo began to feel quite distressed in that situation. All of his companions have been defeated in some way. Every time he suffers, this flashback of his family comes to him. Junwo was overwhelmed by depression. Now he believes this is the natural end for everyone who gets involved with him. This only made him even more frustrated. It was then that Stylato said he was grateful to hear him lamenting for him. Showing that he had managed to hear all of that, he assured that he was still alive. Junwo began to feel happy, realizing that he shouldn't think he would die so soon. He said he would get him out of there. But he was immediately shocked. Stylato, using his bones, managed to lift all that weight. Junwo was scared by what he was seeing and asked if the young man was okay and what that was underneath him. The hero assured him it was something very important. Soon after all these events, they went to the hospital. Junwo was asking the nurse if he was at the right room, and she wanted to know who he was looking for. Junwo said he came there to see Chrome. It was then that he realized he couldn't remember her real name. As soon as he managed to find the name in his memories, he said he came to see Yan as he is her guardian. The nurse understood, said that the girl had woken up a few minutes ago and needed to recover, but our protagonist was very happy with this news. He simply thanked the nurse as he began to enter the room. Some nurses gathered to gossip. They noticed that the young man had a lot of elegance, but he didn't seem to be the girl's boyfriend. He might still be in the position of a friend and thinking various mischievous things. They recognized that his body was very beautiful. Ignoring any kind of hospital etiquette, Junwo began to shout in the hospital, calling for Chrome. To his surprise, the woman was sitting on the bed. Getting closer to her, Junwo said he was very relieved. She asked what was wrong as it was making her uncomfortable. Junwo said she almost died. He was then very happy to know that she was safe. Even though she felt embarrassed by those words, Chrome said he was exaggerating. Junwo wanted to know how she was feeling and she limited herself to saying that she was fine. While spitting a little blood, she said she had some internal injuries, but it was nothing serious. Junwo asked her not to exaggerate and to keep resting. It was then that Chrome noticed his arm was bandaged, and from the moment she confused his image with that of Justice. She asked how long he would keep calling her by her heroine name, saying that our boy could call her Yan without any problems. It was strange to be called by her war name in front of normal people. Junwo agreed with that, but she had a few more things to say. She wanted to know how Stylato was doing. Even though he seemed to be okay, his health condition was much more severe than hers. They went to his room to see him. The hero was unconscious, and Junwo said his condition was serious. He suffered multiple fractures and damage to several organs while trying to withstand the weight of the rubble. But it was thanks to his effort that they managed to recover the computer that was in that lab. Chrome didn't understand why he went so far. It was then that someone in that place said that his wish was to hunt those people. Since he and everyone from El Condor hate villains, it was Niam who said this. Continuing his sentence, he said that Stylato had a special hatred for those who experiment on humans as he was a victim of that once. Niam said that she, Teo, the name of Stylato, had grown up in the same orphanage. She ended up awakening her powers very early, but this was not common with all children. At first, Teo seemed to have no powers at all. Junwo didn't understand this, since that hero clearly possesses some kind of ability. It was then that Niam said he has one now. In the past, he ended up being kidnapped, and some people experimented on him. An experimental drug was injected into his body that immediately caused an accelerated process in all his cells. A horrible experiment was underway. He probably remembered the computer password because of those days. Junwo asked what happened to the villains who did this. Niam said that they all disappeared for almost 10 years, but recently they returned to act. That's why Stylato was so dedicated to preserving that computer, as it was his only chance for revenge. Junwo now observes the fallen hero's body, and he needs intensive medical care to continue living. That is truly a regrettable situation. In the waiting room, Junwo is sitting and began to reflect. He finally managed to use a new level of his power, but his arm is very compromised. He needs to keep practicing. While thinking that he would like to have someone who could help him, a woman approached him, asking if they are the group that fought against those villains. This woman has a mask on her face and has colorful hair. Her name is Banshee, and she is second in command of the Union faction. Our boy doesn't know what she is doing in that hospital. She said she heard that the group suffered several injuries. Junwo confirms this, and they also recovered a very important item that could be useful in searching for the villains. She congratulated their effort, asking if this information had been shared with anyone else, because the computer should be handed over to her. Junwo found that request very strange, but she was categorical about all the items they had obtained. They should be handed over to her immediately. Junwo didn't like the way she made that request and didn't understand why he should hand over the material. Banshee said he was just complicating things and that the Union would resolve this internally. People could get very nervous if they knew the villains had returned. There's no need to put all that stress on the public, but our boy said that the villains have returned and the heroes need to know this truth. Showing that his patience was already at its limit, Banshee didn't want to repeat her words, saying that the Union would take care of it, and that a matter like this should be resolved internally, hoping our protagonist understood. But firmly, Junwo said he disagreed with her. He acknowledged that the information shouldn't be leaked to the public. It would be a problem if the Guardians discovered something like that. but he wouldn't hand over something his companion risked his life to obtain, as that is excessive. Banshee told our boy that she wasn't asking but giving an order, and if he needed to feel a little pain to understand this, so be it. Junwo couldn't believe she would use her power inside a hospital. It was as if someone was going to cover for her through all this, until a person appeared, interrupting everything, saying that she was being too irritable. He said that his sister was being too direct with her words, and his presence caused a great commotion among the women in the place. Banshee asked why he was taking so long, and the young man said he bumped into many fans at the hospital entrance. Junwo realized that face was familiar. He had seen this man somewhere else. That was when he remembered that Viento, besides being a hero, is a celebrity and had become incredibly popular. Viento began to address the newcomer, acknowledging his dedication, but that some things could become problematic if shared with the public, and he asked if he could handle the consequences of causing trouble for powerful people. Junwo realized that this annoying dude would continue to insist, willing to cover up the fact that the villains had returned. He understood that there was no other option in this scenario. He told them that there was a misunderstanding. He never said he wouldn't hand over the content, but he had a small request to make of them. Stylido seems to have finally woken up. As he puts on his clothes, a large scar on his back is visible. The nurse asked if he was sure about this, as he should be resting, but he assured her that everything would be fine, because his bones regenerate very quickly. Outside, he realized there was something urgent to resolve. That villain they encountered in the building, there was something wrong with him. Stylido didn't imagine that those people were still experimenting on humans, and this time he will make sure to kill them all. Through the computer, he managed to discover some locations, and he needs to hurry. That was when he found our protagonist in that hallway. Junmo was worried about him, asking if that hero should have already left the hospital. Stylido thought our boy went there to pick him up and was moved by that. He accepted the ride and asked how Chrome was doing. Junmo replied that she had already been discharged. Showing him his phone, he asked him to look at that photo. Miento is commenting on social media where they appear, attracting great notoriety, which could increase their standing within the faction. Stylido realized that this is a pleasant surprise. He asked me where the items he obtained in the lab were. Junmo said he had to hand them all over. Stylido did not like that answer at all. Our boy said that Banshee showed up at the hospital the day before and almost threatened him to get that, so Junmo used that opportunity to boost his popularity in the faction. Stylido immediately grabbed him by the shirt. He seemed genuinely upset about losing that material. He asked if he had forgotten the reason he'd risked his life in that place, almost getting crushed while trying to preserve the evidence. It seems our protagonist didn't see all those human experiments in that room. That was when Junwo asked him to calm down. He wasn't going to hand over all the material without a backup plan. And speaking of the devil, his phone just rang. While on the call, Haste said she didn't know why she needed to do this favor for him, assuring him that she managed to copy all the information as he had requested. Without any issues, she left it at the old Justice House, and he could pick it up whenever he needed. She just wished she had been informed about things like this with some advance notice, and our boy apologized for the urgency. By handing over the items, he managed to boost his team's reputation, something they agreed on. After that, he called Haste to have her pick up all the items and make a copy of their contents. Luckily, she was very fast. All the information Banshee has, they also have, which made Stylido a bit more relieved. Junmo reminded him that he was used to pretending to be other people. He knows very well how to handle situations like that. Taking something from his pocket, he said he found that in the material they had recovered. It seemed to be some kind of substance, and it is definitely interesting for them. Inside another building, some men are discussing what lunch will be that day. A little distance away, there is a man apparently in disguise. He is watching the conversation of those people very closely. Hidden behind a wall, we realize is our protagonist. He is now going to use the identity of the man he was observing. Managing to walk inside the building calmly, he is now in the genetic analysis room. There is a wide variety of material. Junwo is walking around that place looking for something. He noticed he is completely alone. He continues searching for his objective, until when looking at a monitor, he thinks he might have found it. He opened the contents of that vial he had recovered on his last mission. He placed the material inside a machine that performs analyses. Junwo gained a wide variety of experience while doing his old job of pretending to be someone else. All he needs to do now is wait. It is unfortunate that he cannot request a formal investigation. While he was thinking this, someone appeared behind him, and the man asked if our protagonist hadn't gone out for lunch. Trying to make up a story, he said he had forgotten something on that floor. The man didn't care about that excuse. He just asked that the item they received be delivered to him later. Junmo assured him he would do that, looking in the direction the man pointed, wondering if it could be the item. He picked up that box, immediately surprised. It seemed to be some kind of collar, and he had seen it somewhere before. The coworker asked if Junwo hadn't seen that yet. It's what the out-of-control users were wearing around their necks. The villains must have forgotten it because it was very damaged. They had a hard time recovering that, but they managed to do it. It seems they can control the berserkers with this type of device, which is much more advanced than he had imagined. Junwo asked if it was that advanced, and that scientist said it certainly took a lot of work. This only confirms our protagonist's suspicion that the villains are still very active. He just doesn't understand why the Union is hiding this. The analysis will take some time, so he will make sure no one enters that place. The others need to know all of this. He stepped away from the computer while the analysis was being done. That was when a system message appeared, stating that content like that already exists. With that data gathered, Junwo met with his team again to analyze everything. The person arrived there asking what all of this was. Naeum can't believe they will have to read all those files. Just seeing the stack of paper made her feel very unwell. Stylato suggested she start with those other 2 documents. Junwo and Chrome have been looking for information in that for 2 days. The poor guys are really suffering. No one expected there to be so much information in that, and they need to filter everything that is important. Junwo seems to have lost it with that work and said he can't take it anymore. Getting revenge for his friend and increasing his popularity in the Union is all well and good, but he is going to start valuing himself more. Seeing that he was leaving the apartment, Chrome asked where he was going. Junwo said he would be a fool if he didn't start spending the money he receives every month, and it would relieve some of his stress. Chrome sighed as he would have to babysit this kid. Naeum was a bit upset. She had just arrived, and they were already leaving. Stylato acknowledged that this work can be very exhausting. Taking a break is not a bad thing, but he seems to have found some images. Looking at it more closely, he noticed something. Naeum realized there was no other option, so she ordered food delivery as it's the best thing she does in her free time. She even asked if Stylato wanted anything, but he was too focused on observing everything. His focus was so intense that he didn't hear that girl's voice. Putting his coat on, he said he would also take a walk outside. Naeum asked if she would be alone because that seems like a prank, and he said he couldn't give too much information until he confirmed in person, assuring her that he would be back very soon. Now all Naeum has to do is wait for her delivery to arrive. She's already very anxious to know what she should eat. A red sports car is tearing through the streets of that city. Wherever that car goes, it sparks admiration in everyone. Our protagonist got out of that wonderful vehicle. Recognizing that driving that is simply amazing, Crone found it strange that he reacted this way only after leaving the driver's seat. Now that they were on the street, he asked what the plan was. Junwo said he thought of several possibilities like saving money or investing in properties, but realized he should buy clothes that fit his body better. Maybe it's him adapting to his new power, but his body is significantly more muscular. Crumb just asked him to follow her. Our boy said he could buy his clothes alone. She said if he did that alone, he would only come back with gym clothes. Junwo said he used to do that because he lacked money. Crumb assured him she would help him make good choices. Inside a department store, they are choosing some more formal clothes. Right after that, they also bought some perfumes for our boy. They took the opportunity to have a meal at a very expensive place, but Junmo was disappointed with the amount of food. Carrying several bags, he couldn't even say how many clothes they had bought. He also couldn't say if it was enough, which clearly upset Chrome. Her look was so frightening that our boy couldn't give any kind of response. She said he could wear whatever he wanted when he was alone, but when he was in her company, he should have a minimum of decency. Junmo didn't understand what she meant by that. It was then he noticed there were many people around them, but they were being drawn to another figure. Our boy identified that one as Viento and was surprised he was in a place like that. Chrome said that the heroes of the Union are basically celebrities, and that man in particular is very popular. Junwo seems not to understand the logic of his fame, not to mention that he doesn't know why Banshee risked using her powers inside the hospital. There were many people in there. Chrome was about to give him an answer, but Banshee herself said she could control the range of her ability. The only thing that would suffer would be our protagonist's eardrums. They didn't expect to find her in that place. Seeing that Crone was there, she asked why she was leaving. The heroine insists on staying close to that rookie. The obvious conclusion for her is that the two might be involved in some way, something that Crone promptly denied. Banshee said she didn't care about that or about the relationship they might have, and she apologized to our protagonist for being inconvenient on that occasion. She doesn't take pride in that. Recognizing that Junwo must see her as a terrible person, she assured him that the truth is much more complicated than he can imagine. It must be strange to hear this from someone who had threatened him, but she thanked our boy for what he had done. Chrome asked if it was okay for her to say this in front of him. Banshee assumed that our boy had already talked about it with her, and everything that is important is already in the hands of the Union, which also has more members than the Guardians. Junwo simply smiled at her, thinking that he has the same information. It was then that someone called for Banshee as they were already prepared for her, and the woman said she had already said what she needed to. As she walked away, she acknowledged that our protagonist is very skilled, saying she has high expectations for him. Junwo was not expecting all that friendliness. Chrome asked if he had really been a victim of that beautiful speech. The Union only cares about itself. Most of its members were former mercenaries, and this also applies to Arcadia. They hardly dedicate themselves to their work as heroes, almost exclusively working as celebrities. Junwo understood his friend's distrust, but felt a lot of sincerity in those words. Crone changed the subject and asked how the analysis was going, and he said it would take some time until they got the results. but he realized he could take a look at the progress of that. He returned once again to that building. Disguised with a different appearance, he began to look for other people, and that same co-worker found him again. Junwo started to wonder if this guy does it on purpose, and the man said he had been working overtime for several days, saying he believes they can use that collar for another purpose and he has been working on it for some time, saying he is impressed with that suppression capability and asked if his colleague knows anything about it. Junwo said he had no idea, while thinking that he fought against those creatures but doesn't know how the device works. The man said that device is inhumane and he wonders who is capable of producing it. He also said that the results of the samples that were placed in the device have already been produced. Junwo was very surprised. Going to the computer, he said that it is very strange, and when he read that message, he was startled, because that sample already existed in that file. Junwo was very intrigued by this information, wondering what could be happening there. Now he needs a password to access that content at level 0. He received a code for Haste herself that was produced for Justice himself. The woman threatened our protagonist if that information leaked in any way. Junwo found it strange that the information already exists in the system, but there is nothing related to it anywhere. This only made him even more scared. While he was typing on the keyboard, he couldn't believe it, because he had found absurd information. It was hard to believe what his eyes were seeing. That material was extracted from the body of the deceased Justice. Right after discovering this information, he left in a panic to meet his companions. If that substance had already been analyzed, it could only mean one thing. The villains Stylito is looking for are directly related to the death of the real Justice. Junwo still couldn't tell anyone what he had discovered. They need to resolve this situation with the team that is already formed. After trying to make a call, he found it strange that he wasn't answered. He finally arrived at the Union faction's apartment. Ringing the doorbell several times, he wanted Stylito to open the door quickly. Asking if he was inside, he said he had very important information to share. Our protagonist didn't notice that a woman was behind him. She quickly recognized the newcomer from Viento's social media. Introducing herself, she said her name is Vivi and hopes they can be friends. Junwo found the extroverted girl strange. Realizing she must be a friend of Stylito, she said that Wilson had left the building just a few minutes ago. Junwo asked if she knew where he might have gone, but she didn't have that answer as she hadn't asked him anything. But it seemed like he was going to a distant place. Junwo immediately started to worry about that fool. He might be doing something reckless right now, like going after the villains completely alone. After taking the bus, Stylito finally got off at his destination. Covering his face with a hood, he begins to analyze that area. That landscape is identical to the photograph he saw on the computer, recognizing that it has been a while since the last time. Nearby, there were some men working. It seems they are on their break. Stylito noticed that little had changed in that place. It still looks like a slum, until he stopped in front of a building. It was in that orphanage that he grew up and spent his childhood. Then he placed his hand on the wall and began to think. Of all the possible places, he didn't want it to be that one. In his childhood, the building was not abandoned. Teo Kang, who is this hero, was only 10 years old and needed a crutch to walk. While he was walking, someone approached him very quickly. It was another child who made a point of bumping into the disabled boy, knocking Teo down due to the force of the impact. The boy ended up hurting his leg that time. And the juvenile bullies said you should be more careful while walking. And they can't tell if the boy can't see or if there's something very wrong with his leg. Teo struggles to get up while being harassed by the juvenile bullies. Later that day, he received guidance from a woman, saying that he needs to learn to get along with the other children. But Teo tries to tell her that's not what happened. He was pushed to the ground on purpose, and these juvenile delinquents keep doing it without stopping. The woman said she had already contacted them and that they are apparently reflecting on their actions. Little does she know that they said that just to appease her. She even suggested that maybe the problem was with Teo. And the teachers can't keep watching over him all the time. It's time for the boy to learn to take care of himself. After hearing that sermon, the juvenile delinquents started to find it amusing. But it seems that Teo was enlightened by that advice. Clenching his fists tightly, he already knows what he's going to do. Outside, the delinquents are happy, believing they will continue with this pathetic life, until they encountered the disabled boy once again. It was time to do something for fun. Running past him, they made a point of knocking him down again, saying that he is not capable of paying attention to where he is going, and that he is not capable of learning, but one of the bullies was surprised. That disabled boy was coming towards him, furious, even though his leg was quite compromised, and the crutch he used to walk was turned into a weapon, striking one of those delinquents on the head with all his strength. The other, who watched everything from a distance, began to get very scared. Teo wouldn't give him time to regret. He was already prepared to continue hitting the other child. And he did this several times while the other bully watched silently. After taking a beating, the boy was begging Teo to stop, but he was determined to take out all the suffering he had endured at their hands. Noticing that everything was too quiet, the woman responsible for the children began to search for them, until she finally managed to find the disabled boy, and she went to ask what he was doing. But the scene she encountered was truly terrifying. Teo left the bloody child lying on the ground. At first, even he couldn't say why he had gone so far. He became distracted thinking about this until someone called out to him. It seemed to be a younger girl. She told Stylito that the orphanage was closed, and the boy said he could see that too. It seems that the building has been abandoned for some time, and the girl extended her hand to him, saying that nothing in this world is free, and now he should pay for the information he received. Styleto said he would only give her the money if she answered one more question. He heard that people are disappearing there, and showing his wallet full of money, he asked if she knew anything. The girl was startled by that question, telling her hero that she knows absolutely nothing and doesn't want his money. Before she could leave, Styleto grabbed her by the arm, because he felt that this child might know something, and if she did, she should share it now. She seemed to become interested in his curiosity. Without saying anything, the girl began to gesture with her hand, asking him to come closer, because she was going to tell him something. It was at that moment that her mouth transformed, resembling a terrifying creature. Styleto barely managed to dodge, but ended up getting hurt in the process. And the girl has something to say about the person responsible for the disappearances, since she is the real reason for all of this. Due to the wound he had acquired, blood began to fall to the ground. Styleto is visibly disturbed by this. Notably, the blood can fall to the ground but does not stain his white coat. He is ready to confront that girl, and she asked what Styleto was waiting for when returning to that place, if it was a reunion of former students. The boy said she spoke as if she knew something about him, and she assured him that she did. He found out that he is a failed experiment, discarded after they used his unique genetic ability. He heard that they wanted to test him much more, and he is happy that he has returned for that. Styleto thanked her for her words, as he was a bit confused about what to do now. Showing his bone stakes, he realized that his decisions had just become easier. That woman doesn't seem intimidated by this at all. Styleto started running towards her, furious. He was ready to drive his bones into that woman who was already prepared for it. Proving to be much faster than him, she managed to attack him first. Styleto wasn't expecting her to have cicadas in her hands as well. The two confronted each other once again. Various blows were exchanged, and it seemed there was a balance of technique and strength. The girl said he is very fun, and she is hoping he doesn't break quickly. Styleto felt that she resembled a wild animal. Gradually, she was managing to tear even his clothes. Then he moved forward and created several bones over his arm, being prepared to strike her with all those weapons. The girl couldn't dodge and was pierced on both sides by those bones. After having impaled her, Styleto lifted her body off the ground. Believing he had finished off his opponent, he said she is much weaker than a failed experiment. Slowly, her hands began to move again, and this time she managed to hold both of our hero's hands. Styleto could feel that she is very strong. To free himself from that grip, he needed to kick her with one of his legs. And that woman seemed to be getting more and more entertained, saying that the last blow hurt a little. But what really surprised Styleto was that she had already completely regenerated. As she threw the pieces of bone on the ground, she asked if this is the right way to treat a pretty girl. Styleto understood that she is physically enhanced, which explains her strength in addition to having great regeneration, a true monster. Furious, the girl said it was her turn to start attacking. She began to deliver several slicing blows with her claws, but the hero managed to create a bone shield. Even though she is very fast, she doesn't have the necessary strength to break his bones. He will keep defending until he finds an opportunity. The woman said he is very resilient, as she had heard, so she knows exactly what she needs to do now. Ripping one of her arms off, she threw it at him, but our hero was very confused by what he had seen. Still in the air, the arm began to change shape, transforming into something completely grotesque. It seemed to be a kind of weapon. Styleto managed to block it with his bone shield, but he still couldn't tell what it was. He tried to repel it, pushing and cutting, but he completely ignored that his enemy had regenerated. She prepared to strike with both legs, utilizing the full potential of her power. Her muscle volume had increased significantly, that is the elephant stomp, and our hero's body was thrown several meters away. Styleto began to spit blood. He definitely sustained some internal injuries from that impact, and the girl proudly said that his bones were not able to withstand that impact. Our hero didn't even have time to react. Something was coming towards him once again. That woman managed to kick him in the face. Falling to the ground, it seems he is finally out of combat. She said that the hero is only capable of controlling the bones of his body, while she is capable of controlling both bones and muscles, showing that she had completely regenerated the arm she had ripped off, asserting that they are not on the same level. Then she remembered that those people only need a small sample. It is not necessary to bring him back alive. She began to stomp on our hero's body with her giant legs. Doing this repeatedly, Styleto tries to defend himself as best as he can, clinging to the shield he had produced. But after enduring for some time, the shield was completely destroyed. He no longer had any defense against that blow. In fact, he did have one, and her name is Junwo, and she is coming at him like a locomotive. Our protagonist managed to push that girl away, showing that the force of the impact was truly brutal. Throwing her far away, he ended up destroying a good part of that building. Styleto began to rise, trying to recover from that beating, while our protagonist said he had gone too far for a walk, asking if he was happy to find him in that area. Getting straight to the point, he said that these villains are directly related to the murder of Justice. They cannot allow them to escape. The girl put her hand out from the rubble. Now she was furious. He hadn't liked being pushed like that. She even tried to threaten our hero one more time, but Junwo was already on top of her, ready to continue delivering his blows. And he managed to throw her away once again, showing that this time his power is more precise. And that is an excellent opportunity to put it into practice. Junwo began to remember what he was going through in his training. Hayes said he needed to rotate his hips more, and never lose sight of his opponent. He should stop focusing only on the upper body and use his legs more to deliver his strikes. It was definitely too much information for him. He still hadn't learned the basics. He is a complete mess. And after taking a few hits, she made a point of reminding him not to forget that he was the one who asked for this, hoping he wasn't tired. Junwo said he was just catching his breath. It was then that the heroine said that this was unexpected. He could just keep pretending and collect his payment. So she wanted to know why he was dedicating himself so much. Our protagonist said he didn't see things that way at first, and that he lost his family to a villain a long time ago. He wasn't able to do anything and had to watch them all be killed. Someone like him couldn't be a hero and focus only on surviving. But now things in his life are completely different. He knows he won't achieve ideals like saving everyone, but he can do his job very well, and that makes sense to him. That's why he needs to perfect that power. Hayes said that having the power of justice isn't as easy as he thinks, and that from now on, she won't go easy on him anymore. Junwo said her words were making him want to regret a little. Now the woman's claws are pointed at him, but she wasn't able to hit our protagonist. Even though she was trying very hard, Junwo managed to avoid any damage. He even found openings in her defense, striking her body multiple times. That strange woman only gets more and more irritated by this. Styleto is watching everything. Since he fought against her, he knows she is very skilled, yet Junwo is managing to gain the upper hand. Since their first fight, Styleto noticed that the boy had evolved quite a bit. Perhaps it's the result of Haste's training. But it's incredible to think that he managed to progress so much in such a short time, because that woman is being completely overwhelmed. Junwo is already tired of hitting her and suggested she surrender soon, as this is getting annoying. She said he shouldn't get too confident just because he landed a few hits. But what she is really feeling is growing more and more irritated. Junwo knows she is very fast, but she doesn't compare to Haste's speed. Then the girl began to strengthen the muscles in her legs, delivering against him the same blow she executed against Stiletto. Poor her, she turned the fight into a brute strength duel against the protagonist. The two clashed, but one of her legs was completely destroyed in the process. Junwo made it clear that in a strength competition, there was no way he could lose. Even though she was very injured, the hatred only grew in that woman. Using her abilities in another way, she created several spikes that managed to injure our protagonist. He realized he had left his guard too exposed as he wasn't expecting an attack after destroying that leg. Very confident, she said that this is the reward for those who show off, and already behind her, Styleto said the same could be said for that woman. Managing to immobilize her immediately, creating several bones from his arm, he ensured that she wouldn't be able to get out of there easily. He had made a sort of binding on her. Now that he saw the girl from behind, he'd also identified a peculiar mark on her neck. That was proof that she had also been used as an experiment. He just didn't understand why she chose the side of those people. The woman said the hero is a fool. Before all of this, they were just flawed people with nothing to lose. She knows he had a compromised leg and asked if he could remember how cruel people were to the disabled like them. She doesn't care at all about the experiments that seemed torturous or how many people lost their lives in the process. Because it was thanks to this that she had the opportunity to have a new life. Her arm had finally become normal, and from that day on, she could live differently. Stylizo realized that she had succumbed to madness. While strengthening her body, the girl disagrees with this statement, but she has yet to show them what true madness is. A large shadow was forming before our heroes, and that which was once a girl had transformed into a monstrous kaiju. Junmo was truly impressed by its size, and the monster began to roar in the middle of the city. The people nearby started to get scared, not knowing what it could be. They presumed it was a villain. Junmo realized that the situation was complicated. He had exhausted himself by using his power in that fight and would not be able to use all of his abilities. And even if he were at full capacity, he would need at least 2 of his most powerful strikes. It was then that his foot touched something on the ground, and then the bluish electricity surged at that very moment. Junmo realized that this was the girl's arm, which she had lost during the fight with him. This sensation was identical to what he felt when he absorbed the powers of justice. The monster asked our protagonist if he had frozen in fear, but the truth is that he was very anxious, for he had definitely become much stronger. Not knowing what he was saying, the monster was already prepared to strike our boy, and he was confident that he no longer needed to worry about the damage caused by his abilities. Using the full capacity of his powers, he recognized that this could be a bit painful. His fist collided with that of the creature, but this time he was using the fullness of his power. The energy released was devastating. The creature's body was unable to contain it in any way. The woman ended up revealing her original body. The damage had not spared her flesh, and she fell to the ground completely defeated. Her body was heavily injured, and her energy was almost completely drained. Junmo found it impressive that she could still regenerate after that, but it seems she was unconscious. After a few seconds, he also felt a great wave of pain pass through his entire body. Stylito, seeing that, became worried for his companion. Our protagonist knew that it would hurt a lot. He just didn't imagine that the pain would be truly intense. He began to fall to the ground, but someone caught his body. To his surprise, Crow managed to find them. She learned through Niam that our boy had gone to look for Stylito like a good friend. Now they look at the result of that battle. This is truly incredible. Junwo is almost at the same level as the original Justice. Styla, though, is very grateful for the help as our protagonist managed to clean up the mess he made. Junwo hopes that he has understood his actions, but Chrome is genuinely outraged after hitting both of them. She ordered them to notify her next time. Styla Dosegi wanted to be sure as the documents were not clear enough. While the girl can assert that this is definitely connected to the murder of Justice, Stylato said that Juwon mentioned the same thing to him. Our protagonist asked if that drug was used for this purpose. Chrome thought the same way. But in reality, it is the complete opposite. It contains no type of poison. In fact, it is a skill amplifier. After all that action, they returned to the hero's headquarters, taking that girl as a prisoner. Around her neck was an artifact capable of suppressing abilities. She seems to be quite impressed with that whole place. Some heroes are wondering if that woman is a villain. They thought there were no more, but that woman was captured by the Union. And if she was captured by some rookie, it means she must be very weak. Since she has very sharp hearing, she became irritated and asked if those heroes would have the courage to say that in front of her. They were immediately terrified by her facial expression. To prevent her from becoming more aggressive, Naim started tickling that girl, saying that she should behave very well in that place, which only made the woman a bit more outraged. Our protagonist, on the other hand, began to hear some footsteps. Banshee had approached him in the company of other heroes. He had already forgotten that he had stolen the documents he handed to her and was already waiting for some kind of retaliation. But the truth is that he was immediately congratulated for what he had done. Banshee said it was great to see that he was working hard. The other hero who was with her said they would be responsible from then on, and the girl should be handed over to them. Stylizo was not very happy about that. It was then that he began to feel something strange inside his head. Those men managed to take the girl, and Naim noticed that something had happened, so she asked what happened to her friend. Junwo also realized what had happened. It was when he felt that sensation inside his head, and a voice asking if he had really deceived her. Our boy started to complain about that sound. Chrome wasn't hearing anything, and he realized he was the only one capable of doing so. Banshee was the one using her abilities, ensuring that our protagonist would pay for what he had done. Now Junwo understands how she is able to use her own abilities. Being sure that this woman must hate him quite a bit, Chrome finally understood what had happened. As this task was concluded, they could focus on something more important, the sample of that drug they had found in the underground lab. Before returning to the hero's building, they were discussing this. In the autopsy documents, there was no mention of drugs capable of amplifying powers. Chrome took the sample with one of his hands, telling him to pay attention. She dripped a drop of that onto one of her tentacles, and he immediately began to lose control, until he completely exploded. Stylito realized it was a similar reaction capable of creating berserkers and delivering a significant increase in the power of abilities. Chrome said that the amount they have in that small tube is enough to kill a person multiple times. Junwo recalled that in the autopsy document it was proven that Justice used his powers before dying. It could have been a reaction to this drug. Thinking about this matter, our boy began to think that Justice might have been a steroid user, and that he might not have originally been so powerful. Chrome disagrees with this situation. Since he was the one responsible for defeating Nemesis, a truly powerful villain, a dope hero wouldn't be able to do that. And in front of them, there's ample evidence to support this. If Justice was using drugs to become stronger, it is not possible for our protagonist to be so powerful by replicating his abilities. Stylito said that this situation is a ticking time bomb, and it leaves no traces behind. Chrome said they need to investigate much more, and that they are getting closer to discovering what really happened to the hero Justice. His companions are also very motivated for this, but they ignored the presence of someone in that place. Naim is completely shocked. She had no idea that the hero Justice was no longer alive. Stylito realized he never explained anything to her about this situation, as it wasn't advantageous to reveal the truth to her. Very upset, Naim asked them to explain what was really happening. Stylito assured her that she is not a gossip, and that they could tell her everything. Now they are in one of the Union's towers. Our protagonist is in the appearance of the hero Justice. It's been a while since he last used that appearance, and he is not used to all this attention. But if he needs to find out who was responsible for that, he needs to interrogate that girl, and he needs to meet with Arcadia for that. Since he wouldn't be someone to give that information to his true self, but he would definitely be friendly with Justice. So our boy was elevated to an office. The person inside the room said he could enter. Arcadia welcomed that unexpected visit, saying that it has been a long time since he last came there to talk. She offered hot drinks to our boy, who immediately declined. Arcadia said she would drink some tea at that meeting, as it is very good for relieving the tension of the routine. Getting straight to the point, she asked what brought Justice to her office, but our protagonist is sure she already knows. He said he heard about the capture of a villain recently. Arcadia knows exactly who he is talking about. Her name is Squall. Our protagonist said that according to the information they have, she might be connected to a very large organization, and the villains must be preparing for something again. That is why he came there to ask for permission to interrogate her personally. Arcadia is impressed that he knows this too, suggesting that Crone must have told him everything. Even so, she acknowledged that this request is completely reasonable. However, she would like to know what Justice would do if she refused. Our boy was confused by that stance. He said that if the information is correct, the situation could be very serious, and they need to act diligently, Arcadia told him that they are just possibilities for now. That girl seems to have a few screws loose in her head. She is closer to a berserker than a villain. Justice asked if he was joking with him, because she is definitely not a berserker, but Arcadia is not so sure about that. Not to mention that if she really were a villain, this situation would greatly benefit Justice's reputation, so he could increase the influence of his faction once again. Our boy wasn't imagining that the meeting would be about this. Arcadia said that the Guardians never had much influence, and they are losing even more after the villains disappeared. And he is not willing to listen to the requests of such a small and weak faction. Justice asked if he was serious, and Arcadia assured him that he was. Turning his back on him, our protagonist said he was only there to waste his time, slamming the door and leaving that man alone. Arcadia found that very strange. He was expecting Justice to make a big scene. It's odd that he accepted what had just happened. Outside, our protagonist answered the phone, informing that things happen as expected. It's time for the hero Justice to spring into action.
Guys, that's the end of the video. If you liked this video, please leave a comment in the comment section. Also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. Like the video and share it too. Thank you for watching and see you next time again.